Apocalyptic Black Technology System. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 The Real Plan. Armored vehicles were galloping among the dilapidated buildings, and in the blink of an eye, Chang'an was already in sight. Yukijin glanced into the sky, and Su Ran's destroyer was in deep siege, like a lone ship in the last days, desperately resisting. But at this moment, Yukijin couldn't help but recall the plan that Su Ran told him many days ago. On the first day they came to the hypermarket, there are many types of insect nests, large, medium, and small. Some insect nests are pure arsenals, and the meaning of existence is to continuously build war insects, while some are militarized hive fortresses, and even combat units that can move on the continent like giant land tanks, and some are experimental bases, specializing in the research and development of various special war insects, and this one in the Ice City is the first batch of insects that landed on the Earth nest, as a worm nest that descended from space, is the vanguard of the invasion of the Earth. It is a multifunctional medium-sized worm nest. It has all the above three functions, but it is more focused on the direction of the arsenal. As for the arsenal-type insect nest, after it lands, it will fully start operation. On the one hand, it will send war insects to hunt and kill humans on a large scale, and bring them back to the insect nest as resources to create more war insects. On the other hand, it will be like an ant nest, continuously spreading the scale of the insect nest underground, using the digging insects to hollow out the ground, so as to build this special biological tissue structure they need to manufacture war insects on a large scale. That is to say, now, under the insect nests in the northern city, it should have been hollowed out by the earth-digging insects. It is an intricate pipeline structure, and in these underground locations, even half of the insect nests on the ground should have been hollowed out by a large number of organizational structures with various functions are full. From the day it fell, it has taken root on our planet. It is not a nest of insects, but a living war factory that grows on our land. As far as I know, there must be a cemetery at the bottom of such a worm nest. The cemetery is piled up with the corpses of humans and dead war bugs recovered by the Black Beetles, and they will be used as resources and fuel to maintain the operation of the entire insect nest. The corpses there are not as simple as hundreds or thousands, but tens of thousands or even tens of thousands. What will happen if a large number of corpses accumulate? Yes, a large amount of hydrogen sulfide, methane, etc. Under such circumstances, as long as we can put in a batch of dynamite, set it on fire, and the explosion will destroy the entire hive from within. I just said that all the facilities inside the nest are organic structures. Although there must be preventive measures in it, as long as our speed is fast enough and the scale of detonation is large enough, it will exceed the self-handling limit of the nest. The entire insect nest will turn into a torch, no matter how many war insect defenses it has on the outside, how impregnated it is, and self-immolation inside. No one can save it, and to do this, I need the help of you and your people. We have to divide our forces into two groups. After 2 days, I will get a destroyer that runs through the sky, enough to track the hive and the whole city. The attention of war bugs at that time. I will attack the insect nest in the northern city head-on, but unfortunately, with the firepower of my destroyer, it may be difficult to break through from the front. This one in the Ice City is the first to invade us from space. Batch, its defensive power should be at the level of a space battleship. I am a single ship, and it is difficult to penetrate it head-on with overwhelming monsters. The most important thing is that I don't even know the firepower of my destroyer. Can it penetrate its defenses? So, I wanted to blow it up from the inside, so, I need you, Lao Yi. Do you still have an armored vehicle left? I want you to use this armored vehicle, take advantage of my opportunity to attract the attention of the insect nest, secretly hide the warehouse, bring explosives, and ignite a fire that can destroy a hive. As for how to ignite this fire, the insect nest is located in Bichang district, along the banks of the river. This is not accidental. As a biological factory, the insect nest also needs water at that time. I will give you 2 deep diving equipment and 2 tons of high explosives. As long as you can accurately detonate the cemetery in the insect nest, we will have a chance of victory, but you must be quick. I shouldn't be able to hold on for too long, and once our intentions are discovered, the hive will take emergency measures, and even take the initiative to cut off the connection with the cemetery of the extracorporeal organs of the hive, and we will have no chance to satisfy the situation. All games are lost. Su Ran's plan, as well as the knowledge about the insect nest, were not conceived out of thin air. In his last life, although he did not have the opportunity to reach the upper level to contact the detailed information of the insect nest, he spent 3 years wandering around and fighting with the insect nest for 3 years. He still knows this basic information, and someone has done it before using a cemetery to destroy a bug nest. It was the second year when the end of the world broke out. It is said that a group of old beauties used this method, blew up a small experimental insect nest deep in Yellowstone National Park. There are successful cases, so Sue Rand dares to use them. Of course, this is also risky. One of them is that the scale of the insect nest in Ice City is much larger than that of the experimental base that Lau Mei blew up, but Sue Rand prepared more explosives, and he himself attacked in the air to attract the attention of the insect nest. Double insurance. Let it go. At this time, Yi Kijin didn't say so much, but simply explained what their mission was. At this time, their armored vehicle was stopping by the river, and there were only 4 people in the armored vehicle including Yi Kijin. It was not that Yi Kijin didn't want to bring more people, but can't hold it anymore at this time. The armored vehicle finally arrived at the riverside. A large number of black beetles and migratory locusts by the river have gone to encircle Sue Rand's destroyer nearby. The river is turbulent, but there is not a single black beetle around. As soon as the armored vehicle stopped, they quickly moved into action, 2 people in groups, and lifted down from the armored vehicle 2 things that were 1 person long and shaped like torpedoes. That is exactly the deep diving equipment that Sue Rand provided for them. These 2 items cost 20 resource points in total, and they are unmanned submersibles specially built by Sue Rand, each of which is filled with TNT. It was built in Bingchang University, and Yi Kijin's armored vehicle was stuffed in it long ago. In order to put it into use at this very moment, Li Shunchang excitedly said, "So that's how it is, so that's how it is." I said, "Lao Yi, you sneaked into the 2 big things of armored vehicles 2 days ago, and it was actually for this moment to come in handy." The 2 unmanned submersibles were all launched, and Yi Kijin immediately started to remotely control them. He said in a deep voice, "What we have to do is very simple. First, find a passage to the insect nest under the river. Second, run the unmanned submersible. Thirdly, detonate. We must be quick. Sue Rand is buying time for us with his life. If we fail to achieve our strategic goal before they crash, our efforts today will be in vain." Meaningless. 2 submersibles are quickly crossing the narrow river. Along the way, the river was turbulent. Judging from the pictures sent back, there were no caves or passages until the 2 unmanned submersibles crossed the Sunhua River under the remote control and came to the place where the insect nest was located. On the other side of the river, the picture sent back from here surprised Yi Kijin and others. Chapter 77 Jellyfish Monster. From the pictures sent back from the unmanned submersible, it can be clearly seen that there are huge underwater caves everywhere under the embankment on the opposite bank and on the riverbed near the water bank, spreading along the banks of the Sunhua River. The number is so large that it makes one's scalp tingle. This, Li Shuncheng's face turned pale. So many underwater caves seem to be dug by insect nests, but everyone knows that these can never all lead to the cemetery. Among these passages, only 1 or 2 are the direct graves they are looking for. Field Road, however, which is looking for 1 by 1. They don't even know if these underwater caves are really connected to the inside of the worm nest. They only have 2 unmanned submersibles, and it is impossible to find them 1 by 1. Moreover, Sue Rand's destroyer is under the pressure of encircling and suppressing the entire Ice City. Can't last long. There are not many opportunities left for them, and even less time. This is unprecedented pressure. One soldier even cried anxiously. He said, "What should I do? Company commander, what should I do?" It's not that his psychological quality is too bad, but how can he not be in a hurry under such circumstances? If he is slow for a moment, all his brothers and comrades will die in battle. But Yi Kijin suddenly said at this time, "These underwater caves should be excavated by burrowers. The vast majority of them should be entrenched places of burrowers." Li Shuncheng frowned and said, "Commander, now that you know this, what's the point?" Of course, it makes sense. Yi Kijin took a deep breath, looked at Li Shuncheng. His eyes were like electricity. "Have you poked a hornet's nest?" Li Shuncheng is also a smart person. Hearing these words, he immediately reacted. "You mean, sacrifice a submersible, blow up a cave at random, and blow out all the burrowers inside?" At that time, which underwater cave does not have burrowers? That must be the way to the inside of the worm nest. At the same moment, Sue Rand's destroyer was fighting with a dense swarm of insects in the sky. The locust swarm surrounded him like a vortex, and his destroyer was fully firing. Wherever the firepower reached, the locust swarm in the sky was shot down like rain, hitting the insect nest below at the same time. Su-Ran's main gun has fired 2 rounds, and the terrifying laser beam roared out from the muzzle, instantly piercing through all the locust swarms in the space, and bombarded the main plane of the completely closed insect nest. Like using cigarette butts, like scalding ants to death, it will use the body as armor to kill and injure the black beetles covering the nest in pieces. But the black beetle rushed up bravely, even charging with the laser beam of Su-Ran's main gun. The worm nest is extremely cautious. Even if the worm nest has been completely closed, it is unwilling to let the worm nest and the worm nest shield resist Su-Ran's bombardment. Under the command of the insect nest, the black beetle is like an intelligent defense network system, densely covering the entire insect nest, strictly guarding against death, and not retreating half a step. At this moment, the insect nest paid more attention to Su-Ran, even more than the previous military offensive. This was not because Su-Ran was a big threat, but because the insect nest was wary and vigilant. It regarded Su-Ran as an unknown alien warship. He didn't know that Su-Ran had a useless weapon that could destroy its insect nest with one blow, so he never dared to take it lightly, defended comprehensively, and never gave any chance. And in this way, Su-Ran's destroyer really seemed to be trapped in a quagmire, surrounded and killed in the sky. Of course, Su-Ran's destroyer was powerful, and it wasn't a cover-up. With full fire, a large number of black beetles and migratory locusts were directly shot and killed. It feels like cutting wheat. The ammunition is no longer like ammunition, and it is consumed crazily. The 2 double-linked forts controlled by Z and C and the others were also firing with all their strength time and time again. They shot down the swarms of migratory locusts that were not afraid of death. Even so, the monsters in the sky seemed to be inexhaustible, even killing more and more. The dense group of monsters, surrounded like a storm, shrouded the sky over Bicheng district like a dark cloud. At first, this dark cloud only covering an area above the insect nest. Gradually, with the influx of more migratory locust monsters, the size of the dark cloud became larger and larger, casting a boundless shadow that even overwhelmed the Sunhua River, covering the entire Bicheng district. On the top of the dark clouds gathered by the swarm of migratory locusts, there are 2 sky patrollers looming behind layers of thick clouds, but they have not made a move for a long time. It seems that they will wait until the destroyer's shield is broken. It is necessary to rush down at the great risk of being shot down by a destroyer, and this moment is not far away. The shield system of the destroyer is already in jeopardy. It stands to reason that the shield system of the destroyer was stronger than the Nightingale aircraft, so it shouldn't have collapsed so quickly. The reason why it was in danger so quickly was because of that weird jellyfish-like creature. It was a Zerg combat unit that Su-Ran had never seen before. He didn't care at first, but soon, he realized why he had never seen this jellyfish-like creature. They are sharp weapons to disintegrate a shield. Their huge jellyfish-shaped umbrellas are extremely peculiar. The moment they touch the shield of the Su-Ran destroyer, they can directly disintegrate the shield structure of the destroyer and combine the dense energy intrastate, disassemble into a mess of loose sand, and directly fight back to its original form domineeringly. Su-Ran has never seen this kind of thing, because there was no energy shield that needed this thing on the Earth in the previous life. When they broke the shield, their bodies would glow brightly, but it was useless. They rubbed around on the outer deck of the destroyer, as if they were showing off their cuteness. The most important thing is that this kind of thing is very difficult to shoot down. Its biological structure is very thin and light. On the Surin destroyer, the ammunition of the smallest caliber 30mm cannon will penetrate it in an instant. However, it was like passing through a piece of paper, and it was impossible to shoot down or shoot it directly. When Su-Ran urgently replaced the white phosphorus bomb to burn and kill these giant jellyfish creatures wriggling in the air ocean, the first of them had already touched the destroyer's shield, which was flickering and on the verge of collapsing. And at this moment, the sky surveyors hidden in the higher sky of the locust swarm finally waited for their chance, howled and killed through the air, and rushed straight to the destroyer with a precarious shield below. Those are 2 sky patrollers, outflanking from 2 directions. During the flight, the whole body has been lit up with a blue flash, and the faint blue flash reflects the surrounding migratory locust swarms like mountains and seas into faint blue. The pulp cannon is ready to go. Su-Ran ordered the entire ship, "Get ready for the impact." At this moment, he was manipulating the destroyer to slowly lift up, machine guns and missiles flying in the air, and the flash of the explosion dazzled the sky, while the main gun in the center of the destroyer was slowly accumulating energy and calibrated, pointing directly at the right side. Skywatcher, open fire. Chapter 78. The Boiling River. Yakujin's plan succeeded. His guess was correct. So many caves were passages dug by the diggers as the construction team of the insect nest, They also serve as the underground defense line of the insect nest and guard under the insect nest. A large number of digging insects are crowded in the underwater caves. Yukijin controls the unmanned submersible to roar into it, then detonate in the center of the burrow, or the explosion happened in deep water underground. Although it was very violent, it was just a muffled sound from the ground, but immediately afterwards, there was a huge movement that shook the river and the sea. What it was like to poke a hornet's nest is what it is now. This explosion shocked many burrowers. These worms squirmed crazily, and even more worms were disturbed. In an instant, the worms in the ground exploded, crowded and vibrated with each other. It gushed out of the cave, rolled in the river water, and set off monstrous river waves. That's real troublemaking. Countless diggers gushed out from the water, howling loudly, and the entire river boiled like boiling. But the explosion also disturbed the insect nest, densely covering the insect nest, and some black beetles near the bottom of the riverbank all turned their heads at this moment, scanning the river. The insect nest was using these. The eyes and receptors of the black beetle are looking for the problem, and Yukijin and the others are urgently hiding in the corner, and at the same time they are controlling another unmanned diving device, avoiding the digging bugs that are making waves, and looking for the real passage to the inside of the bug nest. However, at this moment, there was a loud noise in the sky. A flash of red rays pierced the sky from bottom to top, followed by a tragic cry. That was when Suran's destroyer's main gun hit a Skywatcher head-on, and the two passed quickly in mid-air. The Skywatcher fell to the ground, while Suran's destroyer was still in the air. Yukijin raised his head in shock, and saw that in the sky, the dark clouds gathered by the locust swarm dispersed, and a huge shadow fell from it. It was a shot-down sky patrolman, throwing a rain of blood that swept across the world, howled and fell from the sky, and crashed onto a huge river bridge at the end of the field of vision. The river bridge was broken on the spot. The river was stirred up tens of meters high. The whole earth rumbled and trembled. Some earth-digging insects that got close were even thrown out of the water, and the big waves even knocked those black beetles that were examining the river. Sweeping down, even Yukijin, who was relatively far away, was almost dragged into the river when a big wave came down. The blood of this thing is also red. Half of the river turns bright red in an instant. Yukijin didn't care about these things at all. He grabbed the soldier in charge of the last unmanned submersible, and shouted in the sound of boiling waves, "Brother, are you alright? Hold on. Hold on." Yukijin has also been paying attention to the battlefield in the sky. Suran is trapped in a tight siege and is in danger, but he has been attacking frantically, showing indomitable spirit, and he paid a very heavy price for this. But both Yukijin and Suran knew that only such an attack could attract the attention of the insect nest to the greatest extent, and make the insect nest extremely vigilant. They felt that Suran's destroyer was bound to win, so they paid attention to and blocked it at all costs. Looking at this scene, Yukijin was extremely shocked, but what Suran thought of was the last words that Suran told him about his plan before. "Once my destroyer is in the air, I will launch an attack at all costs, and my back, life and death, will be completely entrusted to you. This is our only chance of victory, and the Skywatcher is not dead yet." Under the dispatch of the worm nest, it doesn't know what death and pain are at all. Light, even firing plasma cannons to support a battle in the sky. While in the sky, Suran's destroyer was starting to move. Its machine guns and naval guns fired at the same time, piercing through the dark clouds gathered by the locust swarm. His destroyer shield system was completely offline at just a moment, and he could no longer hover in the sky to be beaten. He had to move and fight against a locust swarm. The sky patroller's plasma cannon is powerful, and it can blast a gap in the heavy armor plate of the destroyer with one shot. Suran must avoid interception as much as possible. Even if he has to be shot, he can only use unimportant parts to withstand the attack. Fortunately, the destroyer is huge in size and sophisticated in defense, so it can still withstand the bombardment for the time being. Suran couldn't withdraw, nor would he withdraw, because he knew that at this moment, Yukijin must be below, working hard for their crazy plan. Just as Yukijin chose to believe in Suran unconditionally, Suran also believed in Yukijin. Unless Yukijin sent a message of decisive death or decisive victory, he would not retreat, because he knew that without any news, it meant that Yukijin was desperately trying. The meaning of cooperation lies in trusting each other. If you don't trust your comrades on the battlefield, then the god of victory will never favor you with the offline of his shield system. The tactics of the locust swarm also changed. From the initial swarming to prevent Suran's destroyer from sinking, it became a real active attack. The swarm of migratory locusts surging like dark clouds in the sky began to turn into black tides, closely following Suran's destroyer, fighting close to each other. A large number of migratory locust monsters even cling to Su Ran's destroyer, crawling along the smooth armored vehicle of the destroyer, spewing a large amount of corrosive mucus, and all the firepower on the destroyer turned at this moment, close to shooting these monsters, preventing them from invading the ship from the destroyer's broken armored vehicles. At this moment, the flames spewed from the muzzles of the machine guns and short-range guns even schemed against the armor plate of the destroyer, piercing the guts of the locusts, and rolling down from the sky howling. And the two forts were also firing with all their strength, and the 4 130 caliber gun barrels spewed deadly blows. With one shot, they could blast through the front of a swarm of migratory locusts that were not strong in defense. If at this time, Su Ran's destroyer was only facing a small swarm of locusts, then he could even wipe them out, but at this moment, the number of these monsters is too much. A few days ago, the cloud bomb that exploded in the sky once caused heavy losses to the migratory locust swarm, and now they have not been able to regain their vitality. However, despite this, the number of migratory locust monsters in the whole city is still large enough. Like tarsal maggots, Su Ran's destroyer followed closely, killing them frantically in the sky and on the ground, and in the higher sky, the other Sky Watcher and the dying Sky Watcher on the ground are screaming again and again, spitting out plasma balls from a distance, and attacking uninterruptedly. The Sky Watcher in the sky is hiding behind the dense locust swarm and attacking. It is difficult for Su Ran to touch its position, while the other end in the river, although dying, is also hidden under the cover of the locust swarm. Under it, it is difficult to hit, but at this moment, a swarm of migratory locusts suddenly charged up, launching a disparate charge on the turret on the side of the destroyer. Forcibly resisting the powerful firepower of the turret, one after another, fearless of death, using life and speed to grab, he made a bloody path and rushed all the way to the front of the turret. Immediately afterwards, more swarms of locusts swarmed up. The strong corrosive slime and knife feed corroded and tore the turret inch by inch. A turret on one side was destroyed abruptly and flew out, separated from the hull, fell to the ground below, and was then torn into pieces by other migratory locusts surging up. Warning, the second turret on the right wing is offline. Warning, the destroyer's outer armor plate has been damaged to varying degrees on the middle side and the middle rear side. Warning, armor plate number 136 is severely damaged and is on the verge of damage threshold. Warning, the repair of the destroyer shield system is blocked. Among the destroyer, Su Ran's ears were ringing with sirens, and the entire destroyer was shaking violently. Sitting in the main driver's seat, Su Ran, who was in the 360-degree rear-view driver's seat, raised his head. As far as he could see, they were all war insects that covered the sky and the sun, and the sound of their wings flapping was thunderous, densely packed. Under the unified command of the insect nest, the offensive was organized in an orderly manner. While launching the attack in an orderly manner, they tried their best to block the destroyer from approaching the insect nest. In the tragic predicament, Su Ran's destroyer was still rushing left and right, regardless of damage and ammunition. If you attack, I will attack too. And at the same moment, under the earth and under the river, an unmanned diving device is traveling at high speed. Chapter 79: The Realm of Desperation. Yukijin has personally controlled the unmanned submersible. The torpedo-like submersible, just now, has crossed the turbulent river with difficulty, and entered the passage they determined all the way, but that passage only should lead to the interior of the insect nest, not absolutely, and there is also an element of adventure in it. What if this passage is a completely blocked and abandoned passage? What if this passage is also one of the berg nests, and no bergs come out just because the bergs inside are stuck? In fact, Yukijin and the others found 2 underwater caves that were not drilled by the burrowers. There are too many ifs in this world. In peaceful times, you can carefully analyze and choose one by one, but in this case, you must make a judgment instantly. In fact, at the moment of making a choice, Yukijin had already done a lot of analysis in his mind. This insect nest is a large-scale biological warfare factory, and it is full of living organisms. If they want to make things, they must also need water, just like a large-scale human factory. Where would the pipeline be located? What if it is a military factory? How to protect the water channel? All kinds of thoughts flashed through Yukijin's mind, and he finally chose the current one. It was a lower cave, hidden under an underwater cave densely populated by burrowers. The reason why he chose this place was not only his own incomplete consideration, but also a trace of his intuition from years of military service. But when the unmanned submersible enters the selected lower underwater channel, these thoughts are meaningless. He only controls the unmanned submersible and moves forward. At this moment, Li Shunchang on the other side, he whispered, "Company Commander, A large number of slaughterers have been found on the right wing. The explosion under the insect nest and the alarm of the digger insect seemed inconspicuous on this earth-shattering battlefield, but they still attracted the extreme attention of the cautious insect nest in the first place for the time being. It could not lose the strength of the black beetles and migratory locusts, so it sent a group of slaughterers who were useless against the Su-Ran destroyer to search along the river to check for any possible threats. However, Yukijin and the others were hiding under the ruins of the half-collapsed wooden plank road by the river, which was fairly concealed. And the group of slaughterers were still a few hundred meters away at this time, so they should not be found for the time being. Yukijin replied without raising his head, "Report the distance in real time, and prepare for battle." At this time, the unmanned submersible was moving underground. The passage was dark and cold, with almost zero visibility. Only the unmanned submersible's spontaneous lights could illuminate a small distance, and the passage was winding, as if bottomless, and as it went deeper, the passage became deeper and deeper. It became narrower and narrower, even to the point where it was impossible for the diggers to enter. This means, self-explanatory. Realizing this, Yukijin's excited hands trembled slightly, but he quickly calmed down and tried to stabilize the unmanned diving device, moving forward steadily along the waterway, and soon, the narrow road disappeared, replaced by many branch roads, tunnels, narrow and bottomless passages. Yukijin changed his color this time. How to choose this? The cemetery is a resource pool for the insect nest. And it is also the first processing procedure for the insect nest to put those corpses into use. Water is definitely needed there, that is to say, in this dense passage, there must be. At the end point will be the cemetery, but the cemetery will never need much water. How much water can the first rough processing need? The insect nest is not for catering, therefore, the direction of the turbulent water flow will never be the location of the cemetery. So, in the sky, Su-Ran's destroyer was fighting through the air. Yukijin was more anxious than anyone else, but at this moment, he forced himself to calm down, and even let go of the joystick, reducing the speed of the unmanned submersible all the way to zero. In doing so, he wanted to know that the water flowed quickly over there. In the case of no power, the water flow in the channel over there is fast and the water is drawn hard, so the unpowered submersible will deflect in that direction. Yukijin is judging bit by bit, searching bit by bit, advancing bit by bit. On the other hand, Li Shunchang led 2 other soldiers to guard the side, reporting the distance to the slaughterer again and again. The distance of the slayer, 530 meters by visual inspection. The distance of the slayer, 510 meters by visual inspection. The slayer is getting closer. Yukijin was still exploring little by little, with cold sweat on his forehead, but his hands became more and more steady. More and more steady. He has no intention of leaving here to escape temporarily. He had to find the graveyard because he knew that above the sky, Su-Ran was creating opportunities for him at all costs. At the same time, in the sky, the front line of the armor plate of Su-Ran's interplanetary sky destroyer, facing the siege of sky patrollers and locust swarms, is also in danger. Fire, missiles whizzed out of the bomb bay one after another, blasting into the sky, tearing out a hole, and Su-Ran drove the destroyer into the sky, biting tightly on the girl who had been avoiding him in the sky. That last Skywatcher, the sky patrolman, was the one whose legs were blown off by the destroyer turret the first time. He has been hiding behind the locust swarm, using the locust as his flesh and blood shield, but at this time, Su-Ran simply charged forward. With full firepower, he shot out half of the few remaining missiles in one go, forced a way through the swarm of locusts, and bit the sky patroller tightly. The sky watcher who fell into the river was seriously injured and died. He bit the sky watcher, and the locust swarm bit him. Although the situation was equally chaotic, Su-Ran would also break the predicament of being surrounded by the first line. There were no missiles left, and the energy in the ship could not supply the main guns to fire a few times. Su-Ran bit the sky patroller. The purpose was not to kill, but to break the situation, to buy time for Yukijin, and to create his own. The illusion of a strong onslaught maintains the worm nest's fear of itself. The anti-stealth ability of his destroyer is extremely strong, far above the existing technology on the Earth, and the insect nest, known for its biotechnology, is absolutely impossible to see through his hull. To attack with all your might, the ones that scare you are the insect nests. However, it is really prudent to regard Su-Ran as a nest of suspected alien civilizations, and immediately let the sky patrollers fly into the sky to escape. Su-Ran's offensive performance is so inevitable, it believes that Su-Ran must have hidden top-level weapons. Otherwise, what is the difference between such an onslaught and killing? That top weapon might be able to destroy the insect nest with one blow, and it may only fire once. Otherwise Su-Ran should have used it long ago. Therefore, it did not dare to let Suran get close to the insect nest, and only used the swarm of locusts to kill Surans. The destroyer is locked in the sky, either grind him to death little by little, or force out that top weapon. In any case, as the insect nest in the Ice City area and one of the key links in this area, the insect nest will not take any risks in this kind of thing. However, Suran did this. Although he killed the locust swarm head-on and withstood the sky patroller, it gave the locust swarms on both sides a chance, and the locust swarmed in, even from one locust, directly from the gap blasted by the Skywatcher, howled and climbed into the destroyer. For this reason, Suran urgently speeded up in mid-air to shake off the denser swarm of locusts behind, which prevented a large number of locust monsters from invading the ship. Even so, a red alarm automatically lit up inside the destroyer, and a cold electronic sound echoed in the bridge. Warn. There are unregistered units invading our ship. Warn. There are unregistered units invading our ship. The alarm rang several times in a row, but no one was able to free their hands. Suran couldn't even take care of it. But at this time, Li Yilin, who was sitting in the back, unbuckled her seat belt, stood up while leaning on the seat, said, "Suran, I'll deal with it. I can't kill black beetles with my ability, but migratory locusts can. These monsters are not as powerful as black beetles." Suran was taken aback, but he did not refuse, but said, "I will open a separate system line to guide you. Now it is confirmed that there are 3 migratory locusts entering our ship. Be careful." Li Yilin nodded, turned her head and rushed to the rear while Suran's destroyer was killing the sky patroller. The locust swarm was biting at the dense swarm of migratory locusts outside is as dense and difficult as the squid swarm in the Matrix. 1 or 2, it is difficult to pose any threat, but a group is so powerful that it is terrifying. The most important thing is that ammunition is being consumed crazily, and Suran's ammunition is running out. Suran also felt a little anxious. How far has Yi Kijin progressed? But Suran is still attacking. He bites the sky patroller tightly. Surrounded by the wide sky and dense swarms of migratory locusts, he is still attacking again and again. It seems that he is still sure of victory. Whether he can fight the finished ammo is the same, and at this moment, on the ground, beside the Sunhua River, Li Shunchang said in a deep voice, "The company commander. It seems that we have been discovered, and the Slayer on the opposite side is approaching at high speed." However, at this moment, Yi Kijin suddenly said, "I found the cemetery." In the picture sent back by the unmanned submersible, it was passing through a water-restricted structure like a membrane layer, and instantly crashed into an underground cavity cemetery where tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of corpses were piled up. On the large water storage platform, and under this platform, there is a huge cemetery that is deep and cold, with an area of tens of thousands of square meters and a depth of several hundred meters, filled with mountains of corpses, and almost at the same moment, a group of weird bugs in the cemetery instantly noticed the intruder and approached quickly. Chapter 80 Instant Reversal. The fuselage of the destroyer was billowing with thick smoke, and it was covered with scars, like an old horse in the twilight, and it was difficult to move. Things are getting worse after entangled with the sky patroller for a long time. Suran made an amazing move at this moment. He suddenly changed the direction of the destroyer, and suddenly gave up on the Skywatcher. He was caught off guard and suddenly turned in the air, speeding up and diving towards the insect nest below. The reason why Suran swooped down suddenly was because he had just discovered that a large number of black beetles guarding the insect nest. A group near the river bank suddenly moved neatly from above the insect nest and moved towards the opposite bank. The situation was too chaotic, but Suran could only think of one possibility for the abnormal movement of the insect nest. It was Yi Kijin who caught the attention of the insect nest in this case. Suran has to exert pressure, therefore, he directly broke away from the stalemate that was now difficult to maintain, turned his fighter plane, and swooped directly from the sky. With his sword pointing directly at the insect nest below. Suran is not a fool. After fighting for so long, although he doesn't know why, what he can see is that the insect nest is extremely afraid of him, and is trying to prevent him from approaching and touching the insect nest at all costs. Therefore, Suran believed that his sudden onslaught would definitely attract the unprecedented attention of the insect nest. Sure enough, the altitude of his destroyer dropped, and the migratory locust swarm that was attacking in an orderly manner in the sky just now seemed to have exploded their nests. They quickly adjusted their positions in a funnel shape to stop the descent of Suran's destroyer, and Suran's sudden dive also made many people in the back cabin unsteady and fell down on the spot. But at this time, I can't control so much anymore. At this moment, The machine guns, short-range guns, and the remaining turrets on the battleship all adjusted their direction heavily, and lined up, firing directly downwards with all their strength. Then, while the destroyer was shaking, the main gun in the center suddenly lit up with dazzling light. A soldier said with horror, "You can't dive like this anymore. If you continue like this, there will be a risk of crashing." However, as if Su-Ran didn't hear it, dragging the screaming destroyer, he swooped down from the sky, and the surrounding locust swarms surged like a wave in this scene. It seemed that Su-Ran was sure of victory and could destroy the insect nest with one blow. As for the insect nest, it is self-evident that Su-Ran is a suspected weapon of other civilizations. Although it has confirmed that there are a large number of humans inside this huge fighter, as a biological civilization, it is very clear, the same appearance does not mean the same species. It looks like a human, but it may not be a human in the view of the worm nest. Su-Ran's previous attacks may be for the purpose of a feint at this moment, to surprise the mother nest. That unknown top-level weapon is probably ready to go. Therefore, at this moment, the black beetles outside the nest shrank on a large scale, stacked one on top of the other, and built a mountain of bugs on the surface of the nest. Facing Su-Ran's swooping destroyer, the insect nest also spared no effort to block Su-Ran and force Su-Ran back to the sky again. The black beetle that was going to attack Yukijin's troops also retreated instantly, returning to defense with all its strength. In the verdict of the worm nest, Yukijin and other humans did not have the power to destroy them instantly, but Su-Ran's unknown destroyer might have such ability, and at this moment, the main gun of Su-Ran's destroyer opened fire, and the dazzling flash of light knocked down the mountains of black beetles piled up on the insect nest, and at this moment, Su-Ran's destroyer was infinitely approaching the worm's nest, and was almost about to crash into it, at the very last moment. Relying on the powerful performance of his own destroyer, Su-Ran forcibly pulled up, schemed over the densely packed black beetle swarm, and roared to raise the height again, but this time, the destroyer was completely thrown into an absolutely unfavorable situation, accelerating the dive and pulling up. There is an inevitable deceleration process during this period, and the deceleration during this period is enough for the locusts to completely submerge this behemoth. The main gun where Xianzi was located was bombarded by the plasma ball of the Sky Patroller, and exploded on the spot. The independent control console was overloaded, and a series of sparks exploded in the control room directly below the turret. Xianzi ran out of the control room and said, "Su-Ran, the two dual 130mm turrets have been confirmed damaged, and there are still many monsters entering the hull." Su-Ran said without looking back, "I'll guide you systematically. Go help Li Yilin. Hurry up." At this moment, in the functional channel in the corner of the ship, Li Yilin struggled to deal with the 3 migratory locusts that broke in before, and was about to use her own ability to freeze and temporarily seal the gap. But at this moment, as the destroyer was completely engulfed by the locust swarm, batches of monsters scrambled in. Li Yilin retreated steadily, and the locusts were cut off one by one. A bloody gash was torn out on her body, and her flesh and blood rolled up. She fell backwards on the ground on the spot. Fortunately, at this time, Xianzi rushed up from behind and pulled Li Yilin back quickly while firing, and at this moment, the entire destroyer was whining, overwhelmed, with scars and smoke billowing, as if it might fall from the sky at any time. This fighter plane has reached its limit. It was like a giant whale being besieged by sharks in the ocean. At this last moment, every step forward seemed extremely difficult. If this continues, the entire destroyer will fall from the sky, but Su-Ran is still waiting. He cannot fall. In his memory, what those people blew up with this method was a small derivative insect nest, which was built by the insects on the earth under the nest. Such an explosion may not really be able to blow up the insect nest like blowing up a bunker. He has to make up for the final blow himself. Therefore, he can't fall, and the last main cannon in his hand is fired, and he can't shoot it casually. However, at this moment, Su-Ran, who was sitting in the driver's seat, suddenly observed a line of abnormality. There were 2 swarms of migratory locusts, which were originally attacking his destroyer from extremely close positions in midair, but for some reason, the precise trajectory suddenly deviated. And the 2 swarms of migratory locusts, like a black tide, suddenly they collided fiercely in midair. Under the impact, these locust monsters themselves began to scream at each other demonstratively, as if they were angry at the little friction just now, and this is just the beginning. With this collision, the swarm of migratory locusts in the sky that were originally operating in a uniform manner suddenly became chaotic like a headless fly at this moment, and their trajectories were wrong one by one. In the already dense situation, a large number of collisions were caused in an instant, and even casualties under the attack. Although there were still a large number of locust monsters besieging the destroyer, most of them were in chaos at this time. The situation where the destroyer was besieged originally showed a ray of light at this moment, and huge hollow areas appeared in several directions. Even the position directly below Suran, leading to the insect nest, was given up. Suran looked down from the perspective of the destroyer, and saw the huge insect nest in the northern city on the ground under his feet, sinking suddenly. At this moment the earth cracked, the river flowed backwards, the insect nests that towered over the earth sank inch by inch, and the smoke and dust swept wildly along the river. That's the cemetery being detonated. The violent explosion destroyed the almost hollow underground structure, causing a full-scale subsidence and landslide. The flames of the explosion gushed out from the ground at this moment. Although it could not be seen from the outside, it should have swept through the insect nest in an instant. So in the sky and on the ground, there are countless war insects, and there is chaos. Yi Kijin, successful. At this moment, the situation of the battle is instantly reversed, and almost at the same moment, Suran forcibly turned from the air, and once again slaughtered the insect nest that was facing a violent shock below. Chapter 81 The Last Strike. It was an incomparably magnificent scene. The mountain located in the north of the city sank suddenly, dust waves and shock waves swept along the river, huge cracks spread across the ground like snakes, and some bean curd projects on the riverbank even collapsed in the huge earthquake. However, the main structure of the nest was not damaged. The explosion tore apart everything in an instant, and the kingdom built by the burrowers in the ground collapsed in an instant. The reversing explosion and flame rushed to the interior of the insect nest through the connected structure. It was instantly torn apart by the violent explosion, and the passages connecting the cemetery and various underground facilities at the bottom of the insect nest were completely closed, blocking larger explosions and flames from the insect nest, and maintaining the outer layer of space operations and space navigation. Although the armor also contains biological structures, it is a super strong material under special metal materials. An explosion of this scale cannot penetrate such a defense layer, but despite this, the soaring sacrificial explosion and flame waves have also rushed into the nest located inside the insect nest. The mantis-like multi-eyed monster lowered its head, and its 32 eyes were illuminated into fiery red by the rising flames. The next moment, it was engulfed by the shock wave and flame wave together with a large number of biological tissue structures in the worm nest, and all the pipes connecting it to various tissues and organs were all broken. The high pressure and high temperature instantly swept through the entire insect nest like a torrent, making it like a grenade with a violent internal reaction. As if it was about to explode in an instant, the inner wall of the worm nest even burst into terrifying cracks. However, in the flames, the monster with 32 eyes did not burn. On the contrary, its 32 eyes lit up inch by inch, which was a brighter color than the flames. Closed, a large amount of dry powder-like things began to escape from both sides of the nest, sweeping the interior of the nest from top to bottom at the same time. From the inner wall of the insect nest, a large amount of bright blue soft tissue-like things began to secrete, but they were not afraid of the flames, and quickly formed a film inside the insect nest to relieve the impact head-on. At the same time, the several lateral edge positions of the nest actively opened a mouthful of one-person high openings, began to actively exert pressure, and released a large number of billowing smoke waves, submerging the entire insect nest in the monstrous black and white smoke. Above the insect nest, the densely covered Black Beetle armor finally fell down one after another in the huge earthquake, and its shield system finally went offline. At this moment Suran was waiting for this moment, but this scene was still beyond his expectation. The internal explosion, high temperature and high pressure failed to completely destroy the insect nest, which was expected by Suran, but according to his plan, such a martyrdom explosion would surely open the exit gate at the top of the insect nest again, releasing the pressure and heat to keep its interior from exploding, and in that way, as long as Suran hits the head, the terrorist attack from the destroyer can completely penetrate the inside of the worm nest that was completely chaotic due to the internal explosion, and mess it up. However, the worm nest's way of releasing pressure completely ruined Suran's plan, but at this time, he had swooped down from the sky, and the laser cannon charged out, and if he didn't shoot, he would shoot. This was the last main gunfire he could sustain, and now was his best chance. Suran's destroyer auxiliary system was damaged in the battle just now, and the smoke and dust interfered with the sight to a great extent. Suran wanted to hit the cannon from the few pressure relief gaps opened by the worm nest at this moment, but he couldn't. Unable to aim, he could only follow a column of smoke and shoot down with one shot. Suran doesn't know whether this cannon can hide or not. The low altitude position has almost been swallowed by the soaring smoke and dust. With the auxiliary system offline, Suran can only rely on the hot spots on the insect nest displayed by the destroyer's heat-sensing radar. And the human brain judges fire. Suran's heart was extremely tense, his hands were covered with cold sweat. If he could punch in through the gap where the worm nest releases pressure, a single blow would surely bear fruit, but if not, his single shot might not be able to penetrate the nest. Suran is self-aware. Although his destroyer is powerful, it is also an interplanetary combat platform, and these bugs are alien races, and this kind of insect nest is their strange battleship. It goes without saying how likely it is for an interplanetary combat weapon platform to penetrate the armor of a battleship used to invade other civilizations. However, at this moment, the height of the destroyer had dropped to the dangerous threshold, and he had to fire this shot. If he didn't, the entire destroyer was howling and vibrating violently. The high temperature also affected the interior of the destroyer. As the temperature rose, the mechanical structure creaked in the huge earthquake, as if this giant might collapse at any time. The locusts were all knocked away by the high-speed dive destroyer, flew out, and disappeared into the boiling smoke, and at this moment, Suran suddenly pressed the trigger button of the main gun. Dazzling flashes pierced the sky and the earth. Suran didn't even blink her eyes. She watched the ray of light piercing through the steaming world, and finally disappeared in the boundless smoke. At this moment, the mantis-like creature inside the nest suddenly raised its head. Through the flames and thick smoke, as well as the heavy outer defense layer of the nest, it seemed to be able to see Suran's blow. At this moment, it seemed to be holding its breath. Extremely nervous, it regards Suran's destroyer as the greatest threat, and believes that Suran's destroyer carries weapons that are powerful enough to destroy its insect nest with one blow, and at this moment, its insect nest's defense is the weakest moment. If that unknown civilization warship really has the force to destroy it, at this moment, it will usher in destruction. At this moment, an emergency defense line was pulled up in the insect nest, and the open pressure relief cavity shrank and closed extremely suddenly. But the ray still penetrated fiercely, illuminating everything for a short time, penetrating and destroying everything in the insect nest. It almost passed the praying mantis monster above, but the light only lasted for a short time. The hole in the insect nest in this direction closed, cutting off this terrifying blow in the center. The blow was completed in an instant, and the dazzling light lasted for a few seconds before disappearing completely. At this moment, Suran's destroyer pulled up quickly and raised its height again. However, from the screen, although the insect nest was slowly sinking, the main structure did not seem to be penetrated. Suran couldn't see the whole situation below, and didn't even know if he hid or not, but judging from the situation, the insect nest should be half scrapped. It's incredible for him to fight big with small things, but at this moment, the nest was bleak, except that the outer shell was still strong, but its interior was almost rotten. The 32 strange eyes of the praying mantis-like creature were still open, and its head was raised, as if it was still staring at it. Dragging the billowing smoke and dust, the unknown civilization warship lifted off again. At this moment, it finally realized that its estimation was wrong and it was too nervous. The opponent has no force to penetrate them at all, but it does not regret it, nor is it disappointed, because for the cosmic race, prudence is always the most important thing. If it makes a mistake in judgment, it will pay a little price at most, such as today, but if the judgment is correct, if it is not cautious, the dead race will be destroyed. They are the ones that are extinct. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82. The dust settled. Suran's destroyer was rising at this moment. The insect nests began to actively sink, and half of the insect nest sank into the underground cavity structure formed by the explosion. Although Suran's destroyer's last shot failed to contribute to success, and the insect nest also reassessed Suran's strength correctly, the losses inside the insect nest were also extremely tragic. As a biological warfare system, the 5 internal organs are now used. The 6 internal organs have been messed up. It is not an exaggeration to describe its state. It can no longer fight in the chaotic sky. The sky watchers fluttered their wings and fled to the distant sky, while a large number of migratory locusts, like headless flies, seemed to be called at this moment, and immediately fell into the insect nest and collapsed. In the formed large underground cavity structure, dense black beetles came from all directions, one after another, one stacked one after another, densely packed with each other, sealing the entire cavity, and the densely covered insect nests were still exposed in every corner of the ground. turned it into a massive black armored pyramid. Knowing that Su-Ran couldn't break through its defense system, it was still cautious and careful. But even so, when the command system of the hive was in chaos, although some black beetles and migratory locusts obeyed the command, there were still a large part of them, slamming like headless flies, and some were even slammed by the loud noises on the ground, and the landslide was frightened, and they flew around in panic. The destroyer that originally attacked Su-Ran also started to flee in panic after Su-Ran opened fire again, scattering like birds and beasts. Is the state of the locust swarm in the sky at this moment. Although Su-Ran's destroyer was unable to penetrate the worm nest, any war worm in the Ice City would not be his opponent if pulled out from under the worm nest, and Su-Ran was not in a hurry to pursue him. Instead, he suppressed his destroyer and descended obliquely from the swarm of locusts that exploded in the sky. The destroyer was already covered with scars, thick smoke was rising everywhere, and many places were directly blasted through by the Sky Patroller's plasma cannon. There was not much ammunition left in the ship at this time. Su-Ran's gaze was passing through the swarm of migratory locusts that were slowly spreading below, and cast his eyes on the huge insect nest that sank into the ground with the black beetles as the outer shield. The hive is still functioning after all. It is one of the first insect nests that landed across space. Its internal structure is complex, its functions are complete, and its emergency system is complete. It cannot be blown up by tricks, but that's enough. The full shrinkage of the worm nest, entering this tortoise defensive state, proves that it has also been severely damaged. The command system is almost paralyzed, and it is even impossible to fully control the operation of the war worms in the whole city. Ensure the safety of the nest. Su-Ran looked at the black beetles lined up closely with each other, with their limbs curled up, covering the surface of the exposed nest like an armor layer, and suddenly felt that these war insects were very useful. It can be used as a charge when attacking, and it can also be used as armor when defending. This is simply the ideal type of fighter. I don't know when my own system will be able to produce such fighters. Of course, it wouldn't be a bug, maybe a mechanical combat unit, who knows at this moment. Perhaps the insect nest was at its weakest, but Su-Ran was also powerless to fight anymore with the firepower of his current destroyer. It is still unable to penetrate the outer armor of this hive, especially now that it has shrunk itself like an iron tortoise. Su-Ran will not have any more chances. Moreover, at least for Su-Ran, his goal had been achieved. Although the worm nest was not completely destroyed, he temporarily lost control of the whole city. The threat of the Ice City, at least for Su-Ran now, is gone in the sky and on the earth. There is nothing that can threaten him. The scattered war bugs are no different from beasts, and it is impossible to shake him and his destroyer at this moment. Inside the destroyer, many people were staring blankly at the world outside the porthole. The cracked river embankment, the collapsed bridge, the destroyed high-rise buildings, the insect nest of Lu Chen, and the clear sky that has not been seen for a long time. The morning sun in the distant light reveals a gleam of light. Everything reveals the desolation and beauty of the end of the world. Many people didn't even realize what happened at this moment, but they seemed a little tranced and felt a little unreal. Su-Ran's palms were full of sweat, and his back was already wet with sweat. At this moment, he felt that his hands and feet were a little numb, which was highly tense. But now is not the time to relax because there are still people waiting for him below. He took off the holographic helmet and switched to full physical operation mode. At this moment, Su-Ran's destroyer was slowly lowering its height, approaching the riverbank on the ground. By the river, Yukijin and the others had already confronted the Slayer head-on, and the gunshots were continuous. Although the combat unit of the Slayer is an extremely lethal and terrifying death to ordinary survivors, it is far less threatening than the Black Beetle in the military. It is a basic individual weapon that can be used shot, and to the hive, they are not that important. The insect nest is shrinking under heavy damage, and even the Black Beetle and migratory locust swarm cannot be fully recovered. These insignificant slaughterers are basically abandoned units. However, these slaughterers can be said to be slaughtering machines tailored for human beings, and they have an almost instinctive desire for killing. Even if the insect nest has fully shrunk, they will not give up chasing and killing the human targets in front of them. Therefore, in the current under such circumstances, they still bit Yukijin and the others like tarsal maggots, forcing them to retreat steadily in the battle. Just now, on Yukijin's side, a soldier was brutally dismembered by the slaughterer on the spot. The river flooded them, and their living space became smaller and smaller, and the firepower in their hands couldn't last much longer. At this moment, Su-Ran's destroyer descended from the air, and the machine gun fired a shuttle of bullets, directly smashing the slaughterers on the ground into pulp. Su-Ran continued to lower the altitude and opened the rear hatch. The soldiers and survivors in the back poured out one after another, and greeted the people below. The soldiers in the Suran bridge had already gone to assist Xianzi to deal with the locusts that entered the interior of the destroyer at this time. Xianzi stumbled out from behind and shouted, "Suran! Suran!" Carrying behind him was Li Yilin, who had almost turned into blood. Gordy put the girl on the ground of the bridge, and the soldiers following him ran all the way to the back cabin, screaming among the survivors, "Is there a doctor? Is there a doctor?" Chapter 83 UCAN number 039, T save anyone like this. Suran switched the destroyer to automatic floating mode. The destroyer then slowly adjusted its altitude upwards, hovering quietly in the sky, facing the completely locked insect nest in the distance. Suran stood up from her seat and walked backwards. Soldiers from behind have called for a doctor, who is examining Li Yilin's injuries among the crowd. Suran separated from the crowd and came over. The doctor raised his head, shook his head at the crowd, and said, "There should be no organ injuries. Such an injury can definitely be cured before the doomsday, but now, maybe." The doctor didn't finish his words. Everyone was not a fool and understood what he meant when the recruit Wang Guoan heard this sentence. His eyes were red, and he said, "Doctor, save her. If she didn't use her ability to seal the gap, Li Yilin's injury looked a bit scary. There was a vertical and horizontal wound on the abdomen. The wound was extremely deep, blood and flesh rolled up, and the woman's body was slender. It looked extremely tragic. It can be seen that this is the second wound. The first wound was not so narrow and long, and it was the second wound that completely brought Li Yilin into a near-death state." The doctor pressed the wound with his hands. In a last-ditch effort, the woman's face was pale. Xin Yu huddled in a corner of the crowd, stretched out a hand, firmly grasping Li Yilin's cold hand, pursed her lips tightly, and didn't say a word while Li Yilin's mouth was still opening and closing. Xianzi leaned close to her and said, she blocked the gap, but at this moment, Suran came up from behind, and he pulled Xianzi and the doctor away. The doctor was taken aback. "What are you going to do, you?" Suran said without looking back. "I'm going to sew up her wound." This time, not only the doctor was surprised, but Xianzi and others were also surprised. It is basically too late to deal with such an injury now, but Suran seemed to be full of confidence, and said, "Doctor, I'm going to give her a blood transfusion." With that said, Suran took out 3 tubes of special tissue regeneration medicine. This thing was built when he was in the 3rd hospital, when he had some resource points. And now he took it all out in one go, and directly tore the bloody clothes around Li Yilin's waist. Seeing this scene, Xianzi turned his head away in embarrassment. Suran, on the other hand, was unambiguous, applying tube by tube. Seeing this scene, the doctor shook his head. "Mr. Su, I know you are eager to save people, but you may not understand that this is not called suturing, and it is meaningless for you to use medicine like this for this kind of injury. You save people like this. Don't live anyone." The other fighters also showed expressions of silence in their view. Suran was not saving people, he was just struggling with his last hope. However, in the next moment, a scene that left people stunned appeared after the ointment was applied. The rolled up flesh and blood began to scab and regenerate rapidly. Suran applied 3.5 tubes of the ointment on such a horrible wound. After more than 10 seconds, the muscles regenerated and healed on the spot. During this healing process, new flesh is regenerated, and the granulation is rolled up, and the scalp of the people watching it is also a little numb. The newborn flesh was smooth and delicate. If there were not a lot of blood on it, who would have imagined that there was such a big wound on Li Yilin's body just now? The soldiers gathered around looked at this scene with astonished eyes, and could hardly believe their eyes. And the doctor changed his face even more, and said, "How did you do it? What kind of medicine is that? It's impossible, no medicine can do this." Suran breathed a sigh of relief. For Suran, where there is any medicine, it is all resource points. This special tissue regeneration potion, 1 control is not much, and there are 5 resource points for 1 control, and 3 control, that's 15 resource points. But Suran didn't feel bad. 15 resource points, in exchange for 1 life, is worth it. What's more, although Suran was not at the scene, he could understand from the few words of everyone that Li Yilin was injured to block the gap of the destroyer. She did this for the sake of the whole ship. How could Suran continue die? However, at this moment, Li Yilin's body suddenly convulsed violently. Seeing this, the doctor, who was still questioning Suran, finally changed color. He didn't care about what Suran's powerful medicine was, and shouted directly, "Blood transfusion. She must transfuse blood immediately." Everyone got busy, some shouting for blood, and some looking for blood transfusion equipment. And the doctor grabbed Li Yilin tightly and asked over and over again, "Can you hear me? What's your blood type? What's your blood type?" Except that Su-ran helped a little with the blood transfusion equipment. The rest was beyond his competence. He stepped back and sat down in his main driver's seat, watching these people rescue Li Yilin. He also let out alongside the destroyer gained altitude inch by inch. The clouds covering the Bingcheng district had just blown away, and the first ray of sky in the morning fell from the east of the world, and the entire scar destroyer illuminated by it was also bright, bathed in the rays of light, as if reborn. In the back cabin of the destroyer, Yikijin and the others were also being welcomed back by a large number of survivors. Yikijin was also very excited. He took Li Shenshen, who was unable to stand still, and hugged the comrades who stayed in the ship one by one. This atmosphere was contagious, and the survivors in the destroyer all showed the ecstasy after the victory. Inside the dilapidated destroyer, there was an uproar of voices, like a carnival feast. After a while, he also raised his head and glanced at the bridge behind the closed door. He knew that his and Su-ran's plan was only half successful. The insect nest in the Ice City was only shrinking, but not destroyed. It should be difficult for it to pose a threat to the Ice City in a short time, but this does not mean victory. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. At this time, Su-ran was still sitting on the main pilot's seat on the bridge, staring at the insect nest under her feet. Silent, he understood that this was not the end, but his tense expression also relaxed slightly. At this moment, Su-ran sat in the driver's seat, bathed in the morning light in the distant sky, felt a warm light falling on her body, and even felt as if she had returned to the ordinary afternoon before the end of the world. However, he knew that victory in this battle was not the end, but just the beginning. He has been exposed to the insect swarm, and will surely usher in the crazy revenge of the insect swarm in the future. From today, he will officially start his bloody battle and journey in the last days, but before that, he will also take this opportunity to earn a lot of resource points for himself under the victory of the Ice City. Su-ran believes that one day, his warships will cover the sky like a forest, making thousands of insects flee in fear of the wind. Chapter 84. Is he whipping the corpse? The inside of the entire destroyer was full of voices and hustle and bustle. I don't know which soldier called Yikijin and Su-ran's names first, and then everyone followed suit. It was as if they had completed the decisive battle and expelled the hive. At this moment, the destroyer is indeed attracting attention in every corner of the city. Countless survivors and surviving military soldiers who have been paying attention to this side are all looking here, showing joy regardless of whether the worm nest was completely destroyed or not. The battle worms in the sky were out of control. This was good news for everyone who was still trapped in the Ice City. Chen Donglian slowly lowered the binoculars. Although he did not participate in it, he had a panoramic view of the entire battle situation here. This moment was also full of excitement and shock. The mighty and powerful insect nest in Ice City was finally defeated, but at this moment, Su-ran had no time to be happy for too long, nor could she be at ease for too long, because he soon discovered a very serious problem. Before that, he hunted and killed countless locusts, but at that time there was chaos. Su-ran attacked with all his strength, and Su-ran really didn't have time to recover any resource points, so a large number of locust corpses, even it was the corpses of the Sky Watchers, all of which fell in the area of the insect nest. Although a small part of them and most of the black beetles killed by Su-ran on the insect nest fell down with the subsidence of the ground and the insect nest, but there are still a large number of corpses of migratory locusts lying around at this time. The surface of the river calmed down a little, and the corpses of migratory locusts also poured out. It would not be an exaggeration to describe it as bleeding and drifting. Su-ran originally planned to take a breather after winning the battle before going to recycle the resource point, but he just noticed that in the river, there were earth diggers surging out, twisting their disgusting huge bodies, eat the corpses of those locust monsters. The insect nest sinks, and there is only time and the ability to recover some of the war insects. These huge digging insects are all abandoned. Without the control of the insect nest, their nature is surging, wandering in the river of blood. Of course they have to eat, but Su-ran couldn't bear anima. This is grabbing resources with louds on. Are my things also yours to eat? So, amidst the excitement and turmoil of people, Su-ran directly lowered the height of the destroyer, and began to fly around the battlefield at ultra-low altitude. His destroyer does not carry a traction device, and the recovery distance of his watch is limited, so he can only lower the height of the destroyer again and again. Fortunately, after the land subsidence and the war just now, the surrounding buildings are basically destroyed. Otherwise, with the size of Su-ran's destroyer, it would not be easy to lower the height like this. Although the destroyer was severely damaged and there was not much fuel left, it was still possible to maintain Su-ran's recovery resource point. He continued to lower his height, circled the battlefield inch by inch, raised his arms, stretched his neck, and collected resource points along the way in a somewhat comical way. It's not very efficient, but it feels pretty good. The migratory locust is no bigger than the Black Beetle. The 2 migratory locusts are a resource point. Recovered along the way, watching the number of resource points on the wristwatch go up like a rocket, Su-Ran's face laughing is about to blossom. This is the thrill of picking up money. The most important thing is that money is everywhere in the worm's nest area. If you can pick up 1 or 200 cash in just 2 steps, how would you feel? Small citizens like Su-Ran said, "I'm going to have a blast." Just now he was in the swarm of migratory locusts. How miserable he was, how dreamy he is now. His destroyer flew like a snail, advancing at a slow speed, for fear of missing a resource point. Xianzi and the others were behind, and they couldn't quite understand what Su-Ran was doing, so they couldn't help asking from behind, a little confused, "Su-Ran, what are you doing?" Su-Ran was concentrating on picking up the corpse. Xianzi asked twice before he waved his hands impatiently and said, "Go, go, don't disturb me." The corner of Xianzi's mouth twitched, and he exchanged glances with his soldiers. Wenguo on said in a low voice, "I said, why is Mr. Su talking about it today? Could it be that he was also brainwashed by the missionary of the Holy Inquisition?" Xianzi gave him a slap on the back of the head, and said, "Fuck you, have you been in the army for several months? Why are you still in a daze?" The Holy Inquisition also said that Su-Ran is the messenger of the true God, but at this moment, the destroyer suddenly shook slightly. That was when Su-Ran fired suddenly, and the target of his fire was the sky patroller who died in battle in the middle of the river. This thing was too big, far beyond the recycling limit of his watch. Su-Ran had to dismember it first. Just work this time. Many people started to discuss, what is Mr. Su doing? It seems to be shooting insect corpses, shooting bug corpses. Is he whip corpses? Su-Ran has no time to care what these people are talking about. Killing along the way, the number of migratory locusts he killed was at least tens of thousands, or even 20,000, but because they were recovered afterwards, buried in the ground, and they were directly beaten to pieces by Su-Ran's machine guns during the battle, there might only be about 10,000 worm corpses that can be recovered. These corpses are scattered in all directions of the worm nest, even on the road where Su-Ran ran before, and it takes him a lot of time to recover them bit by bit. Besides, there is another thing that Su-Ran can reclaim, that is the collapsed buildings, wreckage and ruins, some of which can be recovered by him. Although there are not many resource points, the damage in this area is serious, and there are still many. Counting all these things, cleaning the battlefield can be regarded as a war. Of course, to clean up the battlefield, Su-Ran was much more energetic than before. At the same time, at the far end of the city, Chen Donglian, who had been paying attention to the battlefield, frowned and watched Su-Ran's destroyer slowly moving around the insect nest, and asked in confusion, what is he doing? Could it be that he has a way? Can the insect nest be completely wiped out? From Chen Donglian's position, he could only see the destroyer, but he couldn't see the ground situation over there. Of course, it was even more impossible to know what he was doing, so he could only rely on analysis after the battle is over. Why are you still circling around the tortoise? Chen Donglian thought for a while, then shook his head, and analyzed it himself. Impossible. If that big fighter can really kill the insect nest, he doesn't have to wait until now. Then he is fighting with the insect nest by doing this. Demonstration? I don't know which unit this person belongs to. He is indeed a person who can defeat the insect nest. I have no clue about his strategic intentions, and I can't guess what he is going to do. After pondering for a moment, this regiment leader Chen waved his hand and ordered, all the staff set out, let's join them. Chapter 85 Get Rich Overnight. By the time Su-Ran finished the long work of picking up resource points, it was already 6 hours later. He started the battle at dawn, and ended the battle when the sun rose. It didn't take long for him to go back and forth, but now it took several times longer to clean the battlefield. In the end, Su-Ran gave up the search because his destroyer's fuel was completely exhausted. He was short on resources before. In order to save resources as much as possible to build the necessary weapons and ammunition, Su-Ran didn't make much nuclear fuel at all, and it was able to last for such a long time because he had been running at low power. At this moment, he had to stop. His destroyer has been running to the limit. Su-Ran returned to the vicinity of the hypermarket where the destroyer launched into the air at the beginning, collected the body of the Skywitcher who was penetrated by him at the beginning, and went to the large open space in front of the hypermarket. The boat slowly fell, and the lights on the destroyer were extinguished one by one. At this point, This short voyage was temporarily ended, but in the process of traveling all the way, Su-ran discovered a problem. Wherever his destroyer passed, the swarms retreated, be it black beetles or migratory locusts. They all scattered when they saw him, and fled frantically. Su-ran didn't know if this was the last evasion order issued by the worm nest before losing the control of the city's war worms, or if they were afraid of Su-ran, a huge destroyer, out of biological instinct, just like they would actively avoid the sky patrol. Same. Su-ran personally thinks that the latter is more likely. These battle insects are acting on their own biological instincts, actively avoiding predators who are far stronger than themselves. Isn't this the nature of living things? But this is not a good thing for Su-ran. He still expects to drive his own destroyer, Whistling Tracer, taking advantage of the scattered state of the city's war insects, to hunt and kill these alien insects like a wolf hunting a flock of sheep. His destroyer is so big that he can't hide it at all. If he really runs away when he sees him coming, then Su-ran will want to cry without tears. However, there's always a way to kill insects. Su-ran is not too worried at this time. It was already noon. The cloud parted from the sky, and the sun spread all over the earth from beyond the cloudy sky. The whole city seemed to be bathed in the glory and reborn as the destroyer landed. A large number of survivors also left the ship. Su-ran glanced at her watch at this moment. On the watch, resource points. 7,889 points. 2 migratory locusts are a resource point. If converted, this is at least equivalent to 15,000 migratory locusts. Of course, the nearly 8,000 resource points are not all the recovery of locust corpses. There are also 2 sky patrollers and some building debris. However, this part is only about 1,000 resource points. Seeing such a number, Su-ran couldn't hold back his smile. When he got off the destroyer, he walked a little more briskly. He didn't look like someone who rushed to fight for a day. Overnight, the resource points that he had spent before had turned into nearly 8,000. Who could be unhappy? Su-ran's only depressing thing is that many black beetle and migratory locust corpses were buried in the tortoise shell of the underground insect nest along with the Luchen. If so, his resource points can at least be a few thousand more. Moreover, Su-ran had accumulated nearly 2,000 resource points before. Adding these more than 7,800 points, the total is about 9,000 accumulated resource points. In other words, there are about 2 or 3 more points. With 100 resource points, his cumulative resource points can reach 10,000, which is the amount to upgrade the system to level 3. Wait until level 3 to unlock more advanced items, and Su-ran believes that in the current situation, he dare not say that he can dominate the Ice City, but it is no problem to walk sideways. With 7,000 resource points, the same destroyer can carry out 7 more, and he still has to worry about it. To a few hundred resource points in this area, Su-ran imagined for a while. The scene of 8 inland destroyers taking off into the sky is simply not too exciting. Of course, Su-ran was just thinking about it. He was about to upgrade to the 3rd level. It would be refreshing to spend all the resources in one go, but it would be embarrassing if there were any more advanced things that could not be put into production in time. Up this time, although the destroyer showed Su-ran's frightening combat capability, it was still a bit weak against the insect nest. He couldn't break through the defense of the insect nest, and the firepower of the destroyer was still not enough. Such a behemoth is only enough to protect itself, not enough to attack. Su-ran's goal is not just to protect himself. Moreover, although the current situation is very optimistic, this situation will not last for too long. The partial victory of Ice City does not mean that the global war situation has improved. In fact, at this moment, the global human front is shrinking. Under such circumstances, however, I absolutely believe that the moment I launch an attack on the insect nest, there must already be insects on the way to help with the cautiousness of this group of alien Zerg. This group of reinforcements may be dispatched from far away, and it may take a long time to arrive in the Ice City, but they must have absolute strength enough to crush Su-ran. Before that, he would either have the strength to fight and stay in Bingchang to fight to the death, or he would take this opportunity to make a fortune here, quickly evacuate, and rush to the Xinjiang survivor base that should be under construction now. Su-ran knew that although he had won, his whole cards were all gone when his destroyer blasted off into the sky and rushed towards the insect nest. The insect nest might have been extremely wary of him, but when Yeokijin successfully blew up the cemetery and the insect nest entered a full-scale defensive posture, but Su-ran did not attack again, it was time for him. He has already admitted that he has nothing to do with the insect nest, and there is no weapon that can penetrate the defense of the insect nest. Therefore, although the current situation has temporarily improved, all the cards in Su-ran's hand have been dealt with. He must become stronger before the worm's nest makes a comeback. In fact, it was just as Suran expected at this moment, sinking into the worm nest under the ground. The land was bleak. The praying mantis-like creature moved from the bottom of the worm nest to the upper position, and a few pitiful biological pipes were connected to its body. Transmit information to the outside, translated into human language. It should be, this is the number 3176 insect nest. The communication has been answered. And now we are reporting the nearby situation. Our cemetery has been detonated. The enemy ship is suspected to have information about our family. The internal space navigation, the structure is basically intact. A large number of derived tissues and organs are seriously damaged. The damage rate exceeds 82%. This insect nest has lost 90% of the war insect control in the relevance area, and the remaining 4 branches are sky patrollers in the Longjiang area, have all been handed over to the 3rd level mobile insect nest in the north. The following is the enemy ship information. It has been confirmed that the enemy ship did not carry top-level weapons capable of destroying the first generation of insect nests. The extraterrestrial organisms on the ship have not been successfully confirmed. They are suspected of using human life forms and are close to humans. They should not be chasing our civilization. The enemy ship is a certain threat, and it has landed outside my worm nest number 3176. It is not recommended that the 3rd level mobile worm nest reinforce my worm nest. I hope to destroy the enemy ship with 10 times the power, identify the enemy ship's life form, and ensure that our family is absolutely safe. Safety. The information in the worm's nest is being sent out with a huddle, and on the other side, Suran's destroyer has landed, and the survivors have returned to the Earth one after another. In all directions, the survivors hidden in the Ice City are also at this moment. They came up one after another, looking for Suran's destroyer roaring towards them. Chapter 86. The heart is too big. Although the destroyer had ducked, Suran was still thinking about related matters. The destroyer was severely damaged. Suran planned to build a batch of maintenance robots from the system, and repair it first, but it also requires a reckoning. Although there are many resource points, they cannot be squandered at will. A maintenance robot needs 30 resource points, while the maintenance resources estimated by the system need to spend 100 resource points. 3 maintenance robots work at full strength, and it will take about 2 days to repair the destroyer from an artificial point of view. This is already very fast. After this battle, the destroyer was riddled with scars, some places were penetrated, and most of the armor plates, although not penetrated, were also damaged to varying degrees, and the 2 completely scrapped turrets also needed to be rebuilt. The amount of work is not insignificant, but Suran was still a little upset. This maintenance cost at least 300 resource points, and it was almost time to build a destroyer when it was repaired, but he can't build more than a dozen maintenance robots for this. If his destroyer crashes, the maintenance robots in these destroyers will also die in battle, and the loss outweighs the gain. Depressed to be depressed, although he dared not delay the repair, he immediately invested in resources and started to manufacture maintenance robots. After all 3 maintenance robots entered the production sequence, Suran got up from his position. He first went to check on Li Yilan's situation. Li Yilan's injury has basically stabilized. Xianzi sent Wang Guoan and the doctor to stay by Li Yilan's side. When Suran asked, Wang Guoan replied very honestly and loudly. Our squad leader said, Sister Lan is a fighting hero. I will do whatever it takes to ensure her safety, and I will never leave before she wakes up. When he said this, Wang Guoan's back was straightened, his face was facing the sky, and his eyes were wide open, as if he was reporting work. Xinyu, the little girl behind, watched this scene and giggled. This smile made the face of Wang Guoan, who had just been majestic for a while, turn red with a smile. He looked at Suran in embarrassment, and wondered, Mr. Su, what did I do wrong? Suran smiled and shook her head, but at this time, the doctor came up hesitantly and said, Well, Mr. Su, do you have time? I have a question. I don't know if I should talk about it. Suran glanced at him, and then understood what this guy wanted to ask. It was nothing more than the special tissue regeneration potion. Regarding this, Suran smiled slightly, and said very politely, I know what you want to ask, but now the battle plan is settled, and there are still many things to deal with. So, the doctor saw that Suran was talking to him so politely, so he nodded and said, You are busy, you are busy. Suran nodded at him, turned her head and walked out. After getting out of the bridge, Suran realized that the survivors in the back cabin were almost gone, and the back cabin was empty. Only Yikijin was sitting in the corner, as if waiting for Suran. Seeing Suran walking out, Yikijin smiled, stood up from the corner, and said, You are a busy person. You only come out when everyone is gone. Su Ran glanced at him. Laoyi, can you blow up a bug nest more slowly? In 7 or 8 seconds at night, I'll be shot down from the sky. Yikijin snorted twice, and said, why don't you talk about me and what equipment? You're good. Shaking your ass, a big plane came out, and you don't know how to get me some equipment. To be honest, I see there are many novels, and I seriously suspect that you are some kind of alien, or simply a reborn person with a system. The corner of Su Ran's mouth twitched, and said, if I were an alien, I wouldn't need to talk nonsense with you here. I would have raised my hand and wiped out the insect nest and human beings with 2 laser beams. Yikijin said, fart, do you think you are a human laser gun? I'm talking. How powerful can a laser shot out of your body be? If you can break through a wall, I will obey you. Laoyi, you bastard. The two fought for a few words, then looked at each other and smiled slightly. Yikijin patted the seat beside him and said, come, sit. Su Ran said, looking at your grand appearance, why do I feel that this place is like your spaceship? Yikijin smiled and said, I have something good. If you don't come here, you won't have your share. Su Ran's eyes lit up slightly, and he took 2 steps forward and sat down beside Yikijin. What is it? Take it out and show it to me. Don't get so close, it's like being gay. Yikijin dismissed Su Ran first, and then sneakily fumbled around in his inner pocket. After a long while, he took out 2 pieces that were flat. The bread that was about to crumble came and said with a smile, hey, pineapple buns, stuffed with red bean paste, the supplies I found in the hypermarket 2 days ago. That bastard Ziansi and I didn't give it to him. Here's a piece for you. For these 2 pieces of bread, I can save a box of magazines. Who'd have thought that such a soldier, who was working so hard for everyone, would treat these 2 pieces of bread as treasures? Yikijin looked happy, and Su Ran was also very happy. He smiled and said, your stuff is too low. See what I have here. Saying that, Su Ran reached into her bosom, and pretended to take out 2 salted duck eggs from the watch space. Yikijin saw these 2 salted duck eggs, then looked at Su Ran. His eyes lit up. Yes, I'll just say, no matter what time it is, our gang of soldiers are not as good as people like you. When Su Ran heard this, she put the salted duck egg back in her hand and said, if you say this, you won't have any part in this salted duck egg. Don't, I still have bread here, don't you want it? The 2 of them were chatting nonsense, sitting in the corner of the dilapidated destroyer with the rear cabin door wide open, and not on bread at this time. Groups of survivors were gathering. Chen Donglian was relatively close to this side. He rushed to the scene at the first time, and left his soldiers to take care of the survivors he brought. The survivors who were withdrawn from the destroyer after passing through the darkness outside came straight to the destroyer, but outside, he was stopped by Zianzi. Chen Donglian frowned and said, it's me, Chen Donglian. Is Company Commander Yi still alive? I want to see him. Zianzi shook his head, and said, he's over there. But Captain Chen, can you wait for a while? He is eating bread with Mr. Su. When is this? Your heart is too big, and you still want to eat bread? Chen Donglian looked in the direction Zianzi pointed, and saw Yikijin sitting side by side with a person he didn't know. Nipping bread in the corner, talking and laughing while hiding in the darkness and covered with sunlight. This scene was harmonious and peaceful. And even Chen Donglian was a little touched. He was silent for a moment, and then he said to Zianzi after cursing, is this a man's romance when he wins a battle and runs to the corner to eat bread? It's really disorganized and undisciplined. Thanks, call me when they're done. Chapter 87, Head Chen and Number 039, S Shock. Chen Donglian didn't wait too long, and it was impossible for Su Ran and Yikijin to eat too long. They all have their own urgent needs to solve, and there is not much time to waste. After eating, Yikijin took the initiative to leave Su Ran's destroyer, and Su Ran planned to check the damage inside the destroyer first, at least refill the fuel that was built just now. But before he could really take action, Yikijin came back again, this time bringing back Chen Donglian. When he came, Yikijin seemed to have briefly talked about Su Ran with Chen Donglian, but even so, when the head Chen looked at Su Ran, he was also surprised. Mr. Su Ran, hello, I am Chen Donglian, commander of the 2nd Regiment of the 734th Brigade of the Longjiang Military Region. Su Ran. Chen Donglian said, I heard from Xiaoi that this huge ship belongs to you. Su Ran nodded. Chen Donglian said again, you are not from the military, and this huge ship is not military equipment. Su Ran nodded, then shook her head again, and said, I'm the Special Commissioner of the Joint Human Defense Agency. This destroyer is a war resource assigned to me by the organization. Chen Donglian glanced at Yikijin beside him, then at Su Ran, swallowed, and said, "Besides, today's battle is also led by you." This time Su Ran shook his head, and he said, "I didn't lead it, it was the cooperation between Company Commander Yi and me. Without him, this battle would lack the most critical link." Chen Donglian's mouth opened slightly, looking a little incredulous to be honest. He had too many questions about it. He hasn't even heard of the United Human Defense Agency, and besides, is this a movie? The equipment produced by any organization has already surpassed the level of the world's powerful countries. Chen Donglian has seen the main laser gun and shield system of this destroyer. These technologies are also available in the country now, but they are definitely not applied to this level. These two technologies alone must lead. They are nearly 10 years old. This is really incredible. Chen Donglian even wanted to shout that this is impossible. Chen Donglian frowned and thought for a while, then said, "To be honest, Mr. Su, on behalf of all the soldiers and survivors of Ice City, I thank you for your contribution, but I'm afraid I don't agree with what you said. I hope you can more openly. We need to know your origin and the origin of your destroyer." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere became slightly awkward. Yi Kijin was actually curious, and almost believed that Su Ran was fooling him, but he almost never asked, and even after the battle, he didn't take the initiative to ask. Everyone has their own secrets. If you really respect this person, don't ask the other person's secrets when they don't want to express them. But Chen Donglian just came here, and he didn't know much about Su Ran, so of course he hoped to understand everything as soon as possible. After a while, Su Ran still smiled and said, "This is the truth, Captain Chen. If you don't believe me, there is nothing I can do about it, and in my opinion, now is not the time to talk about these things." The insect nest fell, but it was not killed. Destroy? My attack this time will definitely attract the attention of the Zerg. At this moment, their reinforcements should be on the way. If we keep discussing my origin here, no matter whether we can find a result, we may not time to do other really important things. Chen Donglian stared at Su Ran, remained silent for a moment, then looked at Yi Kijin beside him. Yi Kijin also nodded. "Chief Chen, we don't have much time. Now that the world is retreating, it is a good thing for us to win a small battle here, but it is also a bad thing. We must make up our minds as soon as possible for the next step." Only then did Chen Donglian exhale, and said, "Okay, when the brother troops gather around, let's discuss it together." The worm nest just fell into the ground, and it seems that not only the control over the city's war worms has been greatly weakened, but also the signal interference of the worm nest to the Ice City area has been weakened a lot. I still can't contact the headquarters. The headquarters may have. But, through our satellite communication device, we just contacted Xinjiang. It is said that the situation has been stabilized there, and a large-scale gathering of survivors is being established, and we may be able to retreat there. Su Ran has heard of Xinjiang survivor base. In the early days of the end of the world, the insect nests there were the first to fall, and the scale was not too large. It is said that they were destroyed by space-based weapons within a few days of jumping. Xinjiang, although it became the center of the storm for this reason and was taken care of by the Zerg, but at that time, when the Zerg had not fully spread the situation, Xinjiang also gained a lot of room for development, and it was difficult to expand, and even became an important gathering point for survivors in the three northeastern provinces. Unfortunately, after saying a few words, Chen Donglian seemed to feel that he was a little abrupt just now, and he said a few more polite words to Su Ran, and the three of them walked out side by side. Su Ran's first impression of this regimental leader Chen was not very good. Although this person was quite polite, he was a bit of an official airs. A bit out of tune, but Su Ran didn't show anything after all. No one has any shortcomings. In this world, a soldier who can flee with survivors is a good soldier. Therefore, Su Ran also politely sent two of the regiment out of his own destroyer, showing the friendship of the landlord. But at this time, another small episode happened. They came out. Outside, two people who seemed to have been waiting for a long time came up. It was a man and a woman. The man was about 40 years old. He looked imposing and was wearing a brown leather jacket. Behind him was a woman with outstanding temperament and bright appearance. She also dressed meticulously and followed the man step by step. Behind him, he looked like a little secretary following behind the big boss. These two people were obviously survivors who followed Chen Donglian, and they joined Su Ran at this time. When Chen Donglian saw them, he introduced them. "Oh, this is Su Xianru, the boss of our Eagle Strike group." He said before that he wanted to get to know the person who defeated the Nest Yingji group, which is a semi-state-owned northern heavy industry company, has many military orders. Looking at this Su Xianru, Su Ran felt familiar at first, But when he heard the words Eagle Strike Group, his eyes lit up suddenly. He knew the man, but that was the previous life. Seeing Su Ran's expression, Su Xianru thought that Su Ran had heard about himself and his company, so he smiled slightly. In the last days, he still looked extraordinary, stretched out his hand, and said, "Hello, I'm Su Xianru. You are Mr. Su, right? You have just walked all the way, whether it is a survivor or a soldier in our army, but no one knows your name. You are a young hero, a young hero." Su Ran's face was a little dark. Not only did not shake hands with the other party, but put his hands behind his back because he remembered that this rich and handsome boss is a future traitor. Chapter 88. This thing is not cheap. Some people always say that the last days are coming, the social system has collapsed, and all big bosses and officials have become fugitives like ordinary people, but in fact, this is not universal. Many truly powerful people have considerable energy and resources in the post-apocalyptic world. Although human beings are no different in front of bugs, those who are capable before the apocalypse will also live better than ordinary people in the apocalypse. This is indeed a fact, and a boss like Su Xianru is that kind of quite powerful person. Moreover, this guy is very faithful. He was born in the Ice City. He fled all the way. Not only did he experience the extremely tragic bloody battle in Xinjiang in the future, but he even fled all the way to Kyoto, and even reorganized the mountains and rivers. Background: at that time also contracted the construction of a 20-meter-long wall and modern fortifications in Kyoto. This Su Xianru himself felt that the mere 20-meter city wall was nothing to the overall situation. He took advantage of this opportunity to cheat, earn a fortune, and build a tofu project, but later it became a breakthrough for the worms. Countless war worms once. From then on, I don't know how many people died because of this before this happened. Su Xianru even felt that he was the proud son of heaven, one of the very few lucky and successful people in the last days. Su Ran also escaped in the capital. In the previous life, Su Xianru and Su Ran lived together in the same place. They didn't know each other, but Su Ran almost went to work for Su Xianru, so he was deeply impressed by this matter, but he didn't expect to be here hidden. It seems that Su Xianru looks very nourished now. At least he has a good relationship with Chen Dongliang, and this guy is indeed extraordinary. In the end of the world, he still looks quite dignified, and he is very friendly when he smiles. If Su Ran didn't know all these things, he would probably have gotten to know this guy very politely at this moment, but at this time, Su Ran's face turned cold, as if he didn't see Su Xianru. He said, "I still have something to do, so I'll go first." After saying that, Su Ran turned her head directly and went inside the destroyer. After a while, the hatch slowly rose, and the destroyer was completely closed. What Su Ran is thinking at the moment is, find a chance, find a way to kill this bitch. It's not difficult for Su Ran, as long as it doesn't cause too much bad influence. So what is there to say to a hypocritical dead man? Su Ran walked away, and Su Xianru and the others looked at each other in dismay. Yi Keijin laughed awkwardly, and said, "No, this, Su Ran is usually not like this. He is easy to get along with." Chen Dongliang said, "I said, Mr. Su, have you offended him before?" Su Xianru looked innocent and wronged, and said, "I only said one sentence. I have never seen him. Why does he treat me like this?" Looking at the big bosses depressed, the expressions of Chen Dongliang and Yi Keijin became even more awkward. But this is just a small episode, except for Su Xianru himself. I am afraid that no one really cares about it. After all, this season is not the time to deal with interpersonal relationships. Su Ran inspected the destroyer, took a short nap, and his maintenance robots were basically completed. This kind of maintenance robot is only about 1.5 meters in height. It looks like a dwarf, but it has 2 legs. The limbs can change the mechanical arm of the tool mode. It can complete a variety of mechanical operations. Turn green. Su Ran put them down together with a large amount of materials, and let the dwarfs go to work, while he went to check on Li Yilin's condition. At this time, Li Yilin had slowly woken up, the doctor had already left, and only the upright little soldier Wang Guoan was still standing beside Li Yilin, as if he was standing guard for the leader, staring ahead with an expressionless face, as if respecting him. A delightful doorkeeper. Seeing Su Ran approaching, Li Yilin said, "I heard that it was you who saved me." "Thank you, you don't have to thank me." Su Ran glanced at the girl, thought for a while, and said, "The thing I used to save you is called Special Tissue Regeneration Potion. You have seen its magic, right? That thing, it's not cheap, so in the next period of time, I'm afraid you will have to work for me to pay off the debt." Li Yilin didn't seem to expect that Su Ran would say such a thing. She was a little stunned. looked at Su Ran, opened her mouth, not knowing what to say even when Guan in front turned his head to look at Su Ran secretly. The expression on his face that couldn't hide his thoughts seemed to say, I think you are molesting a little girl, but I have no proof of course. Su Ran didn't want to be pornographic, he was really short of people. His destroyer needs a crew, and if more destroyers or stronger things are launched in the future, he can't pluck out a handful of hairs and drive hundreds of clones by himself. Right, he really needs a group of people. Under the intelligence system, although the number of people needed is not many, there are always living people. Although Yukijin is reliable, he is a member of the military. Once the tide of the army joins the army in the future, it is impossible for him to stand firmly on Su Ran's side in the future situation. Su Ran will definitely cooperate with the military, but cooperation does not mean handing over all of his things to the military for control and driving. He also needs to maintain his independence in this way. It is very necessary to cultivate a group of insiders who can be trusted. However, seeing that Li Yilin was still very weak, Su Ran didn't say much, and after a few words of relief, she stood up and went out. Su Ran left, but Li Yilin felt rather stunned and stood there in a daze. After a while, it was Wang Guoan who broke the silence. The soldier looked at Li Yilin very seriously, and said solemnly, although I think Mr. Su is a brave and good man, I think he may have plotted against you. Li Yilin, you? What are you talking about? Walking in the corridor inside the destroyer, Su Ran was also making batches of things in his mind, including weapons, ammunition, equipment and various other necessities. The manufacture of large pieces has to wait until the third level to make a decision, but the sooner these corners are accumulated, the more beneficial they will undoubtedly be. Su Ran walked all the way forward, while thinking about how to seize the time to kill insects efficiently, on the other hand, thinking about how to build his own team. In fact, Su Ran had an idea about killing insects before. He could borrow the power of the military to help him. This was impossible before, but it is different now. He should be able to borrow this power. See what method is used in at this time, with the destroyer as the center. A lot of survivors have gathered outside, several times larger than before. In this short period of time, many survivor teams have gathered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Boss is Brilliant. The huge destroyer falling into the skies like a huge searchlight, attracting a large number of survivors. With the fall of the insect nest, the entire city's war insects were out of control, and their threat factor was greatly reduced. Although they still posed a huge threat to ordinary survivors, it was not in a state where it was difficult to move an inch in the ice city. The soldiers who hid in the corners of the city with the survivors all gathered one after another. Many people don't understand the situation. Judging from the situation, they all think that such a behemoth should be a weapon of the military, especially some soldiers, and even believe that it is their trump card to turn the tide of the battle. The scene of the destroyer flying across the sky and piercing the sky patrollers head-on was too shocking, and because it happened high in the sky, many people saw this scene. But when the people arrived here, they realized that this behemoth was not from the military, but a private fighter named Su Ran. Many people were astonished to the extreme. Therefore, at this moment, Su Ran stepped out of the destroyer and immediately attracted the attention of a large number of survivors. The survivors were agitated. Look! He's out, that's Su Ran, Mr. Su. The owner of the sky fighter. My god! Why is he so young? Isn't he really from the military? That's awesome. If I can get on his sky fighter, what do I have to worry about surviving in the apocalypse? This is the owner of the sky fighter that defeated the insect nest. He is the hero who saved the ice city. Many people didn't understand the situation. They didn't know that it was Yukijin who blew up the cemetery that caused the insect nest to sink. They only saw Su Ran's destroyer sweeping the sky and rushing towards the insect nest. They were shocked and felt that it was Su Ran's effort. The crushed hive. Those who can live to this day have some brains. Anyone can see the current situation. Su Ran has a strong combat power, so everyone wants to curry favor with him, regardless of whether they can get any substantive benefits from Su Ran. The benefits? Let's talk about fawning first. Many people are like this. When faced with weak people, they raise their heads arrogantly and dismiss them. When faced with those superior and powerful people, no matter whether they can benefit from the other party, they are willing to laugh and say a few beautiful words. Moreover, at this time, Whoever has a little relationship with Su Ran, or even speaks a word or two, can raise a little bit of status among the survivors, and invisibly gain vain social attention, but Su Ran didn't care much about it. He had so many thoughts in his mind, but he didn't have time to satisfy the curiosity of the over 10,000 survivors. In fact, at this moment, Chen Donglian, Yi Kijin and others in the military at all levels are in a state of desperation. This huge group of people, what to eat, where to live, etc., are all big problems. Su Ran is not in a hurry to implement her plan in the military, but is going to hunt some bugs with a dark energy armor and dark energy hunting gun first, and wait for the batch of new equipment that she is currently manufacturing to be completed, and then shotgun for cannon. He had rested long enough, and it was time to continue accumulating resource points non-stop. But at this moment, an excited voice suddenly sounded from the crowded crowd. Su Ran. Brother Su. It's me, the man shouted quite loudly, and the voice was still familiar, so Su Ran turned her head and took a look. After seeing who the man was, Su Ran couldn't help being slightly amused. He knows that person. It was Lin Yuandong, who had made friends with him in the third hospital before. Seeing this guy, Su Ran couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Seeing this, Lin Yuandong was overjoyed, and led his men to forcefully squeeze out of the crowd. Su Ran remembered that when he was in the third hospital, Lin Yuandong had a dozen or even 20 people under his command, but now there are only 7 or 8 people around him. Obviously, with the previous turbulent changes, his life was not easy. Fortunately, I am alive today. Lin Yuandong was extremely excited. He walked this way and said to his subordinates, let me just say, make more friends. Make more friends. Ho ha ho ha, this Su Ran, if there is no today, who would know what he is like? Waiting for someone. Several of his subordinates were even more excited than Lin Yuandong. Now that there are so many survivors here, everyone knows that Su Ran, who holds the huge sky fighter in his hand, is an invisible and powerful force. Even the military has to be polite to him. Whoever has a relationship with him now, the benefits it goes without saying. With so many survivors, Su Ran ignored none of them, but stood firm for them. How could this make them unhappy? Lin Yuandong's younger brothers were all chattering, and the more they talked, the more outrageous they became. Boss is amazing. This isn't amazing, it's clever. I got in touch with Su Ran early on. The previous misunderstanding was not in vain. That's right, the boss is smart. The boss is smart, but when they really got out of the crowd and came in front of Su Ran, these people stopped talking. Lin Yuandong rubbed his hands and said with a smile, Brother Su Ran, what a coincidence. I really didn't expect that it is the owner of the sky fighter. This is really. I thought before. Su Ran has always had a good impression of Lin Yuandong. At this moment he smiled and said, why do you think so? I thought you were the kind of businessman in the last days. I didn't expect. Lin Yuandong said twice, but he didn't expect. His eyes turned around on Su Ran and the sky fighter behind him. His eyes were full of with a shocked look. I'm still a little ashamed to say it. Before I analyzed it with my subordinates, I thought you must be a businessman of the last days. Su Ran smiled and shook his head. Hearing these words, his heart moved slightly, and he said, did you just gather here? That's right. Lin Yuandong said, we just came here, and we heard that the owner of the sky fighter is Su Ran, so I wondered if it might be you, Brother Su. I really didn't expect. Su Ran smiled slightly and said, well, then what are your plans for the future? No, we are a group of ordinary people. Who is Lin Yuandong? The reason for Lin Yuandong's eagerness to come forward, of course, is to get in touch with Su Ran and get some benefits. Lin Yuandong didn't expect that before he had the nerve to speak, Su Ran would actually express this meaning. Moreover, this is not a little bit of benefit, a little bit of benefit and directly becoming Su Ran's younger brother. Can the effect be the same? Isn't this asking for money and dropping money in the sky? Lin Yuandong was happy in his heart, but he didn't show it. Instead, he responded to Su Ran's words very conservatively and restrainedly, as if he was afraid that he would make a mistake and Su Ran would change his mind. But Su Ran said with a slight smile, how can a commoner live with so many brothers in this era for so long? You are also a capable person. You said that you thought I was like a businessman in the end of the world. Now I really want to as a businessman in the last days. I am in need of someone to help me. Lin Yuandong froze for a moment. Su Ran's request was somewhat different from his thoughts, and he couldn't help asking, this is, Brother Su, you already have this sky fighter, and the supplies in the Ice City can be bought wherever you go. If you can collect it, what else do you want to resell? Su Ran smiled slightly and said, I want the body of the Black Beetle. Chapter 90 Raptor Heavy Chariot. Lin Yuandong and others were directly brought into the destroyer by Su Ran. As for this, many survivors below are very envious of Lin Yuandong and others. Su Ran was not in a hurry to assign tasks to Lin Yuandong. There are still a large number of survivors and military personnel gathering here. His resources are not yet ready, and the business cannot be done now, so he probably talked to Lin Yuandong one's own thoughts. Su Ran wanted to use the military to collect Black Beetle corpses for herself. What he wants to do is such a transaction now. These military personnel are running out of weapons and ammunition, so Su Ran will use the weapons and ammunition produced by the system to exchange for insect corpses, and then make a profit from the difference. For example, if one resource point can be exchanged for 20 laser swords, Su Ran can exchange one Black Beetle corpse for 5 laser swords and sell it to the military. Of course, the laser sword is relatively tasteless, and the military probably doesn't like it. However, this is just a metaphor. With such a discount, Su Ran mobilizes these military soldiers, and the efficiency will far exceed that of him hunting a lone Black Beetle. He didn't do this when he was in the 3rd hospital before, because the military had no shortage of supplies at that time, and Su Ran's strength was not enough. If he dared to do this kind of business, he would definitely be controlled by the military immediately. Later, the whole city was in crisis, the whole body is moved with one trigger. This method is even more impossible to use this method, but now is the opportunity. Moreover, the war insects in the Ice City are now scattered. If these soldiers hunt and kill the Black Beetles at this time, the risk factor will be greatly reduced. When Su Ran brought Lin Yuandong and his group here, he had to let them handle the related matters for him. Su Ran had to kill insects and prepare other things, but he didn't have time to waste on this. Su Ran briefly said, temporarily placed Lin Yuandong and the others, and hurried out to kill insects. But watching Su Ran leave, Lin Yuandong still felt a little unbelievable. He never expected that what Su Ran wanted was the corpse of a Black Beetle. Lin Yuandong couldn't help but a series of question marks in his mind. What does Su Ran want the corpse for? What is the use? Su Ran didn't go too far. There are so many survivors gathered in this area. Some Black Beetles have already heard the news and wanted to come to forage, but at this moment, their groups are extremely weak, let alone the overwhelming crowd. There was a large-scale insect swarm, so Su Ran stopped outside, using a dark energy hunting gun and a dark energy armor to hunt and kill Black Beetles one by one. In this process, there are still many convoys of survivors gathered from all directions at this time. Su Ran's destroyer has formed a drainage effect. It was difficult not to be noticed when it was flying in the sky before. At this time, they all converged here, and with the weakening of the insect nest interference, the military's communication in the city has been restored a lot. Headed by Chen Donglian, he is also taking the initiative to gather the scattered survivors and brother troops. After a few hours, more and more survivors gathered in this area, and Su Ran also closed his gun and returned to the destroyer. At this time when he came back, Su Ran noticed that there were many soldiers gathered around the destroyer, looking left and right, looking curious and envious, but without Su Ran's order, they couldn't enter the destroyer. Yes, and Yikijin even asked his cronies to draw a line around Su Ran's destroyer to prevent too many survivors and soldiers from approaching. Yikijin handled these matters very carefully. Before the victory, human beings were fighting together, but now the situation is different. Yikijin and Su Ran didn't say anything, but they all knew that many of these people present had the idea of destroying ships. Some people are intentional and incompetent, while some people have strength and confidence, and these people can be called Yikijin's brother army. He didn't want Su Ran to conflict with the military, so he took the initiative to stand up and guard the line between the two. Su Ran meets Yikijin outside. Yikijin said, "The officers here are basically all here. Commander Chen wants to hold a joint combat meeting. You can see if you can." Su Ran nodded and said, "Come to my place to have a meeting." Now there are all people outside, let alone tens of thousands. How can there be a meeting place? Su Ran saw Yikijin's good intentions in his eyes. Of course he would not be ungrateful, nor would he make Yikijin embarrassed and difficult. Yikijin nodded. Su Ran glanced at the time on his watch and said, "I'll see you among the destroyers in 10 minutes." After saying that, Su Ran returned to his own destroyer, closed the hatch, although he directly shouted out the system, and dropped the thing he had just built. The light flickered slightly, and the eyes dimmed slightly in front of Su Ran. Two things appeared. One of them is none other than the Nightingale aircraft, which is being launched in the form of an aircraft, lying horizontally on the ground, with distinct water chestnut angles, black refraction, fierce and powerful. The other is an armored car that is the Raptor heavy tank produced by the system. It is 11 meters long, 3.2 meters high, and 2.96 meters wide. The front main armor plate is made of heavy composite materials with a thickness of 800 millimeters. The 3-layer armor defense layer is built with an equivalent steel plate thickness of more than 2,500 millimeters. At the same time, the tank carries a 150 millimeters caliber turret, a short-range 55 millimeters vehicle-mounted cannon and a radar. The communication system has a layer of deflector force field shield in the front direction. This thing is a behemoth under the second-level manufacturing list, and the cost of one set is as high as 110 resource points. Suran built this thing, on the one hand, to hunt and kill insects for himself and the whole city. Under the current situation, driving a destroyer or Nightingale aircraft is not suitable for hunting. On the contrary, this thing is at present the overlord of the land, is relatively easy to use. On the other hand, Suran also wants to use this thing as a selling item to encourage the military. With 1,100 resource points, he can take it home. If you want the military to lend yourself strength and let them take the risk to hunt and kill the Black Beetle at this time, if they don't come up with something real, how can they do it? But at this time, Yukijin and the others had already arrived. There were quite a few of them, about 20. The lowest one was a platoon leader, and the one with the highest rank was Chen Donglian, the regimental leader Chen. They were all soldiers from a small group of troops gathered from all directions. Suran welcomed them in, and took them directly to the long sand table 3D projection table inside the bridge, as a temporary meeting table when entering the interior of the destroyer. These officers all look very surprised, and the Raptor heavy armored vehicle quietly placed in the rear cabin was all pointing, curious and surprised. Suran deliberately put this thing out for everyone to see. Chapter 91. Next stop, Xinjiang. Where did you get this big chariot? Yukijin looked at it, and ran 2 steps forward, came over and whispered to Suran, and said cautiously, "You have such a good product, why were you reluctant to take it out before? Let me driving my scrapped armored car to my life." "No, you have to borrow me to drive this thing for 2 days, I lent you to drive it for 2 days, so can this thing come back to me?" Suran squinted at Yukijin and said, "If I had this thing before, can I not use it for you?" After 2 sentences, they also came to the position of the long meeting sand table in the bridge. There were not enough stools here, so they all stood. Seeing this, Li Yilan in the corner felt that it was inappropriate for her to stay here. She wanted to leave, but Suran pressed her down. Seeing Suran, many officers came up to shake hands with Suran. Some of them just wanted to show off, while others were very excited. These soldiers were not of high rank or age, but they didn't have any twists and turns. They were also northerners, and they all had a refreshing temperament. Knowing that Suran was the main driver to attack the insect nest, they all admired them in their hearts. "My name is Wang Yi. I would not dare to do what you and Lao Yu did. You are a true hero. I admire you. You can go and ask. I, Wang Yi, are the thorn in the army and have never admired anything. Man, I'm going to give you a thumbs up today, Mr. Su, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's amazing. You dare to go out at this time, and you can still accomplish things. It's really amazing. Brother, I can't believe that you are not from the military. Are you from a special department? Can't you speak? You are Suran? To be honest, seeing you surrounded by insect swarms in the sky makes me sweat for you. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't dare to participate in the battle when I watched you go up to kill. Fortunately, you succeeded and survived. We will all be comrades in arms in the future. We are all comrades in arms. If you have anything to do, just tell me. From Private Angle, I will definitely be there at any time." After some courtesies, everyone stood around the conference table, and Chen Donglian, who was in the middle, clapped his hands and said, "Judging from the current situation, I am currently the person with the highest military rank and the oldest seniority. I will not be polite. Everyone should be aware of the current situation. Although the ice city is temporarily safe, the insect nest has not been completely destroyed. With their current military strength, it is impossible to completely destroy the insect nest, and according to the latest news that our department has received, Xinjiang City is currently the closest known large-scale military garrison survivor base to us. I suggest that we can move towards Xinjiang in the future, and during this period of time, we'd better hurry up and gather the survivors and brothers in the ice city to prepare for the big retreat. If the evacuation is successful, we might be able to apply for nuclear weapons to destroy the insect nest with a devastating blow. Of course, in the stage, we also need to confirm the status of the insect nest in real time. If there is a chance to destroy it, we must not let it go." Hearing these words, everyone nodded their heads one after another. At this time, an officer said, "This time there is a lot of noise. Although these bugs are spreading around the world, I will never doubt it. They will deploy troops in a short period of time to deal with the situation in the Ice City, that is, to deal with us. Therefore, there should not be much time left for us to recruit survivors for a large retreat, as many as 7 days, as little as 2 days. Bugs, the reinforcements will definitely appear in the area around the Ice City also. What we need to be more careful about is the revival of the worm nest in the Ice City. After all, it has not been destroyed at all, and now it is only shrinking its defensive state. What will happen next? When will it recover and attack us again?" Something no one knows. Yukijin, who was standing beside Su Ran, took a look and introduced in a low voice, "This is Xiang Zillion, Commander Xiang." Su Ran nodded. To be honest, the people in this room, the battalion commander, the company commander, and the platoon leader next to him are also a bit big-headed. He's going to be snobbish and remember all the senior officials first, and at this time, Chen Donglian, the head of Chen Donglian over there, also took over the conversation again, saying, "Captain Xiang said a lot, and not only that, although the war insects in the Ice City are scattered, they still have the instinct to hunt. We with so many people gathered here, for them, it is undoubtedly a group of prey gathering. We must strengthen our defenses, and at the same time explore the way out of the city and open up a way for us to retreat at any time. Here is the map. I will now assign the tasks and action plans of our brother troops." Chen Donglian is a cautious person, but he is also an experienced old regiment leader. Before today's meeting, he had already made preparations. However, the people who gathered here, regardless of their official titles, were from various troops. In the state of hearing about each other, under Chen Donglian's reasonable deployment at this time, there were no accidents or conflicts, and everyone was convinced this is not only seniority, but also ability. Although this regiment leader Chen is full of official airs, he still has something in his stomach. In Huaguo, people are the easiest to deploy, and the most difficult to deploy are also people. It is the ability to do this well. Chen Donglian is very smart. After a brief contact with Su Ran a few hours ago, at Su Ran's place at this time, he did not act aggressively. Ren and Su Ran talked about the meaning of the destroyer for a long time, assigned tasks, and divided temporary defense areas, but they didn't involve Su Ran at the end. Chen Donglian said, "Mr. Su, what are your plans?" "Xinjiang is also my planned destination." Su Ran first opened his mouth to express his agreement, and then said, "But my destroyer, as you have seen, has limited internal space, and once it takes off, it will be a huge target, so I'm afraid I won't be able to go with you in the future, and I will be the first to rush to Xinjiang." Xiang Zillian nodded, and said, "That's true. Tens of thousands of survivors drove with us on land. You can't let your destroyer follow us slowly, right? You will be in danger, and we will be in danger. You can go to Xinjiang first. Well, when the time comes, we will send someone to accompany the ship, and when we arrive in Xinjiang, we can make sure to contact there as soon as possible, so that Xinjiang can send troops to meet us." Everyone could see that although Su Ran's destroyer was huge and powerful, it was meaningless when a large group of troops retreated from a long distance. Dangling in the sky, it was a conspicuous live target. Instead, Su Ran said, "Okay, but don't worry, I won't leave now. I will stay in Bingchang for the time being, and go out with you." Chen Donglian nodded when he heard the words, and said, "This can't be better. In fact, I was going to tell you about this just now, but I don't know how to say it." Chen Donglian said, "Okay, the assignments are almost the same. If there's an unexpected situation, everyone must give feedback immediately, especially platoon leader Wang. Your investigation team is the eyes of everyone here. You must not only keep an eye on the insect nests in the northern city, moreover, we need the reinforcements of bugs that may appear at any time. Mr. Su, if necessary, I also hope you and yours. Then our plan will be like this for the time being. Do you have any objections?" Chapter 92 IN number 039, I'm really not so honest. I'm really not so righteous. Everyone looked at me and I looked at you, but there were a few people who were hesitant to speak, but they didn't really speak. In fact, among these officers, there are still a few people who feel that they should find out Su Ran's origin and take back all of Su Ran's military weapons and equipment. It's just that Yukijin and Chen Donglian have expressed their opinions to them before, and Su Ran reversed the situation again. The people in the Ice City war situation, these soldiers, all want face and integrity. They didn't go to war during the war. How can they talk to Su-ran at this time and tell Su-ran to fully take back Su-ran's things? Su-ran saw the scene in his eyes, didn't point out the matter, but opened his mouth and briefly talked about his doomsday merchant plan, so that he could quickly accumulate resource points with the help of these soldiers. When Su-ran said that he wanted to do business, these people frowned. Obviously, they all felt that Su-ran was too Philistine to tell them this at this time. Isn't this taking advantage of the fire? One officer even frowned and said, you said you want to do business with us, sell us arms and necessary supplies. Aren't you trying to make a fortune in the last days? Yi Kijin was also a little surprised. When he thought about it, the Su-ran destroyer was in his hand. Although he didn't say how strong it was, at least it was not a problem to collect supplies in the Ice City. He proposed to do business at this time, but Su-ran smiled slightly, and said, don't get me wrong, I'm here for business, but you may have misunderstood. The things I want to barter are the corpses of bugs. Hearing these words, everyone was taken aback. Xiang Zillian couldn't help but said, you want to exchange worm corpses with us with ammunition? This, Mr. Su, don't blame me for being blunt, you are a bit rude. Many people looked at Su-ran and thought Su-ran was crazy. What time is it now? Food and ammunition are the most important resources, and worm corpses, what can worm corpses do? The blood of black beetles and migratory locusts is highly corrosive, and although the slaughterer does not have such corrosive blood, it also contains alien viruses. Whoever dares to eat it may become infected in minutes, and now the world there was a great chaos. All the factories were basically scrapped, and it was almost impossible to recycle and reprocess the insect corpses. In other words, the insect corpses were waste now, and Su-ran wanted to exchange important supplies for the insect corpses. Isn't that crazy? The relationship between Yi Kijin and Su-ran is better. He neither wants the military to suffer nor Su-ran to suffer. Hearing this sentence, he immediately said, are you crazy? Chen Donglian couldn't help but said, Brother Su, I understand what you mean. You know that our army is in trouble now, and you want to help us, but you are afraid that we won't be able to save face? To be honest, just now you said that you want arms for insects. Zombie, I am really moved, because we have almost no cost at all, but we can't do this. In this way, we appreciate your kindness, and we are not polite to you. We do need arms, but we can use food, tobacco, gold, and you are exchanged at a lower rate than normal. It's all due to us accepting your favor. How about it? Chen Donglian's words made many people react, and they all showed their original expressions. It turned out that Su-ran wanted to help them in a different way. Xiang Zillian showed a look of shame, and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Su, I'm a big bastard, I didn't think so much. This, many officers nodded their heads one after another. I see, Mr. Su is very hard-working, and he wants to help us. Yeah, exchanging insect corpses for resources, isn't this a loss-making business? Someone with a straightforward personality even walked over directly, gave Su-ran a friendly punch on the shoulder, and said, Brother Su, you are really righteous. Those who hesitated to speak before and wanted to explore Su-ran's identity and recover Su-ran's destroyer also showed same at this moment. Su-ran is so righteous, not only confronted the insect nest head-on, but also planned to provide them with arms for almost free. They also coveted Su-ran's destroyer before. This is too inhuman. After all these words, Su-ran was in a daze. Why did I suddenly grow taller? He really didn't expect that he made such a proposal. So don't get me wrong, no, I don't want to give you supplies for free. I want to lend you to earn resource points. I'm really not so generous. Just as Su-ran was about to say something, at this time, a platoon leader surnamed Ni stepped forward and said directly, let me stand up and say something. I know some of us think Brother Su is mysterious, some people even covet this big plane, but Brother Su is so righteous to us. Do you still have the nerve to show those ideas? You are all soldiers, how thick-skinned are you? Many people lowered their heads. Su-ran choked back at what she said, and looked at the scene in a daze. But at this time, Chen Donglian frowned and said, Su-ran, I understand your intentions, but one size counts for one size. You have done enough, you have to help us, we can't really take your things for nothing. Of course, I will not put 2 onions into the elephant. We don't have much, but please let us barter. Even if we don't make an equivalent exchange, we can't let us take advantage of you like this. In fact, Chen Donglian is even more curious about how Su-ran can conjure up so many arms, but this is the point of the story. The brothers Su-ran and Su are so righteous, if he keeps holding on to their secrets, Chen Donglian would not be embarrassed either. The corners of Su-ran's mouth twitched a little, and he opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. There seems to be something wrong with this situation. But when it came to this point, Su Ran couldn't say anything. He slammed his mouth, thought for a while, and then said, "Well, if this is the case, I will take a symbolic amount, but not there will be more. We still mainly use insect corpses to exchange. In fact, I do this because I hate insects, and I want to let these insects die as much as possible. I will make a list later. How many insect corpses what materials can be exchanged? Have you seen the chariot outside? It is also one of the things that can be exchanged at that time. If you get the insect corpses, you can call my people to take them back, and they will settle the bill uniformly at that time. Look, how about this?" Chen Dongliang and the others listened, and nodded again and again. "I understand your feelings. Those insects have countless human blood on their hands. Now they can kill them in turn. I think everyone hopes to do so." Chapter 93 IN number 039, M going for a drive. Of course, there are also many people talking about this, thinking that Su Ran is playing for some name. These black beetles definitely have special uses, but if Su Ran doesn't say anything, everyone's guesses can only be superficial guesses. After all, from the obvious point of view, Su Ran's approach is still beneficial to them, and the current situation in Bingcheng is like this. The army has to resist the attack of the Black Beetle, gather survivors, raise supplies, and prepare for the new capital. The head of the regiment also insisted on focusing on the overall situation. How to escape and retreat is the key now. Who would spend too much thought on pursuing Su Ran, who now has extremely strong force, and at this juncture, Su Ran didn't make it up, because it didn't make sense. Many people have seen him recover the Black Beetles. This is something extremely difficult to explain. In fact, Su Ran didn't intend to explain. He held a powerful force in his hands. If he didn't want to explain, would there really be a stunned young man chasing after his ass to ask? Even if someone wants to get to the bottom of it, but Su Ran doesn't want to answer, the other party won't even have the chance to talk to him. Moreover, even if he lied about collecting a large number of black beetles for scientific research or something, it would make people laugh. In the current situation in Bingcheng, is it necessary to transport out the mountain of black beetles? Moreover, there are black beetles all over the world now, so it really needs to be studied, and it doesn't have to be Su Ran can explain, but it's not necessary. It took Su Ran some time to come up with a list of exchanges, which were basically ammunition, grenades, rocket launchers, etc., and the Raptor armored combat vehicle was placed in Su Ran's. It takes a total of 1,100 resource points to bring it home. In addition, Su Ran found 2 small warehouses not far from here, equipped with some weapons and equipment, and gave them to Lin Far East Al. At this time, Su Ran said, "All the insect corpses exchanged are brought here. Without my permission, don't let anyone enter here. As for how to carry the insect corpses, it's up to you to figure out a way." Lin Yuandong nodded repeatedly. He was a little curious, what did Su Ran want so many insect corpses for, but he wisely didn't ask, but said, "Okay, Brother Su, leave this matter to me." Su Ran smiled slightly and said, "Having said so much, what reward do you and your brothers want?" What Lin Yuandong was waiting for was Su Ran's words. He eagerly came forward, but if it didn't do any good, who would work for him? Hearing that Su Ran finally mentioned this matter, not only Lin Yuandong, but also his little brother standing behind Lin Yuandong all showed excitement, but Lin Yuandong was still polite first, and said, "As far as the relationship between the two of us is concerned, let's not talk about these things. Just let me help you." Su Ran shook her head. How could she not hear Lin Yuandong's polite words? He said, "How can this be done? These are 2 different things, and you have so many people. Tell me, what reward do you want?" Lin Yuandong just started laughing, glanced at the 7 or 8 brothers behind him, and said, "Well, we actually have no other requirements. Brother Su, I see that your fighter jet is so big, it should always need some manpower. If you don't dislike it, see if you can." Su Ran actually expected Lin Yuandong's request. Although he doesn't have much contact with his big brother, Su Ran can also tell that this is a smart man. He understands that any benefits at this time are empty. If he can board Su Ran's destroyer, that is what he wants. Food, drink and even weapons are more worthy choices that meant long-term security. As Su Ran's person, how could there be less food, drink and equipment? Su Ran didn't refuse this request. Anyway, his destroyer was really short of people. Others couldn't guarantee it. Lin Yuandong should be quite reliable, and it would be good to work on the destroyer. Su Ran said, "Okay, I happen to be short of people there, so you all come up together later. It's just my destroyer, Big guy, the things and equipment inside are intricate. So, when Su Ran said this, Lin Yuanduang understood, and said, Brother Su, don't worry, people like me are my own brothers, I will definitely not let them mess around, let alone make any fools. If something goes wrong, you can ask me, okay? Su Ran said, since we are on my boat, we will be like grasshoppers on a rope from now on. We will prosper and we will all lose. I can't guarantee anything, but at least we won't be short of weapons and food. In the same way, I also hope that everyone will do their part to blaze a trail in the last days together. Everyone nodded one after another, showing excitement. Su Ran also nodded. Su Ran couldn't trust all of these people. It's okay to recruit a destroyer to be a late-stage personnel. In the future, the real talents must be cultivated by themselves. Of course, it's still too early to say this. Although the destroyer is huge, it hasn't really reached the point where it needs countless people to work together in a holographic operation mode. Su Ran is enough to complete about 90% of the functions of the destroyer. Recruiting people now is to plan for the future, and it is even more for his layout after he arrives in Xinjiang. He is not a lone ranger in the last days, with all kinds of equipment in hand. He is too busy to handle everything alone. After giving some simple instructions and buying people's hearts, Su Ran also became busy. He has nothing else to do. The only and most important thing is to hunt black beetles. At this time, the sky had completely dimmed, and the soldiers of the military were following the divisions divided by the head Chen Donglian before. Manage the survivors in a unified manner, let them temporarily settle down in and out of the hypermarket by region, and distribute food in a unified manner. Huge searchlights were set up around them. Those were the original equipment of the hypermarket. At this time, they were pulled out directly, connected to the generator, and put into use directly. The hypermarket and its surrounding areas where survivors gathered. The area is brightly lit and dazzling. This brightly lit scene is really rare in this apocalyptic era. So many people gathered together, as if they were going to hold some grand bonfire carnival. Su Ran drove his raptor chariot directly out of here along the passage left by the military. When he came out, Su Ran saw that there were groups of survivors gathering here. These survivors gathered from all directions. There are large groups of fleeing teams, and there are also sporadic scattered survivors. Su Ran greeted the stake chief who was in charge of security at the bayonet, and then drove to the layman to find the Black Beetle for a drive. Chapter 94 Level 3. The night in the Ice City is getting deep since the power outage in the whole city. The Ice City at night is still cold, with shadows and darkness everywhere, faintly, and the low roar of monsters can be heard from the corner. Su Ran's raptor chariot has already driven out of the area of the hypermarket. While driving, unmanned aerial vehicles were launched from the raptor chariot one by one. That's the Pathfinder and the boy. It was Su Ran who created the integrated automatic cruise drone from the system. Name, Pathfinder Multifunctional UAV, Level 2, Description. The Pathfinder Multifunctional UAV is a military-grade air reconnaissance and patrol unit, equipped with an advanced AI brain, capable of reconnaissance, patrol, early warning and other functions, and equipped with multi-purpose detectors, which can be accurately confirmed biological and ordnance targets. The Pathfinder has a battery life of up to 35 hours, a speed of about 180 km per hour, and cannot carry weapons. Cost: 40 resource points. Name, Boy Warning Drone. Level 2, Description, Boy Warning Drone. The drone is equipped with optical camouflage and ultra-long battery life, can enter the optical stealth state in a static state and maintain an operating state for 160 hours. The drone is only put into operation in a static state, is the battlefield warning line on the mobile battlefield. 2 Boy Warning Drones can complete the network. The radiation monitoring of a single machine is 10 km, in the land and air range. Each additional drone in the network, the monitoring range will be doubled, and any non-registered unit entering the area will report the danger to the command center based on the drone AI system. Cost: 60 resource points. These 2 drones were also specially made by Su Ran Pathfinder. He built 2, mainly to assist him in finding the hiding places of large groups of black beetles under the complex urban terrain. As for the Boy Warning drones, Su Ran built 6 of them in one go, and he released them all. These 6 boy drones will be networked 200 kilometers outside the city of Bingcheng to comprehensively monitor the land and air conditions. When a swarm of insects arrives, an alarm will be reported as soon as possible. No one knows when Changxi's reinforcements will come, but Su Ran can be sure that this time, the reinforcements from Changxi will definitely be able to destroy him. Although Su Ran won a small victory in the Ice City, the bugs are still extremely powerful on a global scale. Their real main force is that Su-Ran can't resist with his current mere destroyer, therefore, Su-Ran pulls out the net to be vigilant. If there is any trouble, he will evacuate the Ice City as soon as possible to ensure the safety of his own ship. Making a fortune in the Ice City and retreating at the speed of light is Su-Ran's goal at this stage. In a short period of time, his idea is that if he cannot conflict with the army of war insects, he will not have a conflict. Vigilance and investigation are very important. The 6-boy warning drones are expected to arrive at the designated location within an hour and start working, and those 2 pathfinders have already started to travel between the buildings, looking for the location of the Black Beetle. The Black Beetle is currently the best war insect to find. They are not like diggers, who dig a hole and run away, nor are they like migratory locusts, which fly all over the sky with wings, so Black Beetles can only hide in urban areas. Su-Ran parked the Raptor chariot and looked for the location of the Black Beetle through the images sent back by the 2 pathfinders, and soon, he made a discovery. It was the location of a residential area. According to the heat source image sent back by the pathfinder, there were a large number of Black Beetles dormant in the darkness and shadow of the huge parking lot underground in the residential area. It is densely packed. It seems that there can be hundreds of heads. Su-Ran's eyes narrowed slightly, and immediately started the Raptor armored vehicle. He moved at a high speed and went straight to the community. The community has long been dilapidated, and the people in the residential buildings are basically dead or fled. In many places, there are still traces of severe scorching. It is a bleak scene. The broken trees in the cave swayed like jagged ghosts. Su-Ran drove the Raptor chariot very domineeringly and ran over it, blocked the entrance and exit of the underground parking lot, and fired a cannonball in a demonstrative manner with a loud noise. The Black Beetles below were instantly startled at that moment, as if a hornet's nest had been stabbed. Dense neighing sounds could be heard from below. Immediately afterwards, Black Beetles roared out from below, neighing and howling, rushing towards them. Su-Ran lowered the muzzle and loaded the armor-piercing projectile. The 150mm armor-piercing projectile roared out, piercing a Black Beetle that rushed up first. At the same moment, Su-Ran's 55mm machine gun also opened fire. The powerful firepower was released in an instant. Su-Ran's Raptor chariot retreated slowly, let the Black Beetles come out of the underground garage one by one, and killed them one by one. This was a one-sided massacre. Su-Ran blocked the exit. A large number of Black Beetles couldn't be killed all at once, so they could only rush out 1 by 1, 2 by 3, 4 by 3, even if they pushed through the walls and the ground, but it didn't help. With Su-Ran's manual control and the control of the intelligence system inside the chariot, no one of these Black Beetles can escape his cannon fodder coverage, and they will all be shot here alive. This tragic massacre lasted about 10 minutes without the insect swarm. These monsters' intelligence was similar to or even worse than that of ordinary beasts. They could not reinforce, and it was difficult for them to form a cooperation. In this way, Su-Ran blocked the exit, and they were all strangled outside the underground garage. Just like these monsters have caught a turtle in the urn countless times and brutally slaughtered human beings after the killing was completed, Su-Ran drove the Raptor chariot to crush it, advancing all the way, recycling resource points all the way. In the process of shooting just now, Su-Ran recovered the resource points at a closer distance, and some fish that slipped through the net were recovered together. Now the number of this batch of Black Beetles is quite large. There can be more than 300 heads, and with the more than 300 Black Beetles entering the account, Su-Ran's all-powerful black technology system also suddenly dinged at this moment, sending out a reminder. His accumulated resource points finally reached 10,000 at this moment, he was finally promoted to another level. Congratulations, dear host. The amount of resource points you have accumulated has reached 10,000. You have upgraded. Your current level is level 3. You have unlocked the 3rd level manufacturing list, and you can check it at any time through the system. Listening to the series of system prompts, Su-Ran let out a long breath after tossing for so long. I finally reached the 3rd level. Chapter 95: Desire for More Resources. After reaching the 3rd level, Su-Ran couldn't wait to open her updated 3rd level manufacturing list and check the items that could be crafted at this level. The things on the list are still densely packed, including various categories, and the number is huge. Su-Ran glanced around, and after getting an idea, he went straight to the most expensive thing. According to the previous rule, each level has an ultimate weapon, which is the most expensive but also the most valuable. The first level is the Nightingale aircraft, and the second level is the Inland Destroyer. At this level, why don't you come to a space battleship or something? But the result disappointed Su-Ran. In the 3rd level manufacturing list, the most expensive item turned out to be a weapon. Name: High temperature molten nano cloud weapon, limited number of self-replications, level 3. Description: this is a star-destroying weapon. After the weapon hits the target, it will spread a large-scale combustion accelerant and the ignition temperature will reach 3000 degrees. Immediately afterwards, the nanomachine will change from a solidified state to the molten state has officially started to operate. It obtains the basic materials and energy of automatic value added by burning inorganic substances, and maintains a high-temperature environment of 4000 degrees. With no limit on the number of times of self-replication, it is enough to burn everything on the surface of a planet. The current model is value-added. A limited number of models, cost 11,000 resource points. The manufacturing price of this thing has broken through the level 3 upgrade standard of 10,000 points, which is unprecedented. Seeing this thing, Su Ran gasped. Although this is not a space battleship, it is still a heavyweight black technology weapon of mass destruction, and under this thing, there is another outrageously expensive thing in Su Ran's opinion. Name: Primary Dark Energy Excitation Drug Unit, Level 3. Description: this is an extremely advanced drug for stimulating biological potential, which allows conventional creatures without the ability to perceive dark energy to have the ability to perceive dark energy. Can control, cost 5,000 resource points. Su Ran can understand that the high-temperature molten nano cloud is expensive, but the price of this thing is so high that Su Ran is a little puzzled. This thing costs 5,000 resource points each. According to its description, one tube is just a perception of dark energy. If you want to use dark energy, you need at least 3 tubes, which is 15,000. 15,000 drops down, or elementary dark energy control. What is the value of this thing? How can it be so expensive? Could it be because of genetic weapons? Su Ran really didn't understand. In addition to this, there are also a large number of other combat units. There are 2 new manufacturable models of low-cost air units similar to the Nightingale aircraft, one of which is an assault fighter with a beam energy weapon, and the other is a stealth fighter with a shape similar to a winged falcon. 300 resource points. There is also a kind of equipment like an air transport boat, which costs 300 resources and carries a low-power rapid-fire beam cannon, which can carry 30 to 50 people inside. In addition, there is an air carrier with a cost of 3,000 resource points. Apart from short-range guns and missile silos, this carrier does not carry other powerful combat equipment. Landing platform and headquarters, equipped with advanced radar systems and stealth capabilities. This might be useful in modern military warfare, but Su Ran thought about the situation of overwhelming locust swarms sweeping the sky. He really didn't think such an aerial platform with low self-defense was meaningful. In addition, there is a Mach-11 flying saucer. This is the closest to Su Ran's expected spaceship for the next level 3. The shape is similar to that of a flying saucer, but it has no offensive weapons. It is purely a space vehicle. One can be built with 600 resource points. Su Ran looked at this thing, and couldn't help complaining, does this mean I need to flee to space? Besides, there were many things that caught Su Ran's eyes. Name: Enlightenment Patrol Ship, Level 3. Description: the Awakener's Guide patrol ship is 123 meters long and 42 meters wide. It is a lightweight interplanetary attack ship, equipped with a superconducting electromagnetic gun, 4 30mm rapid-fire guns, and 8 sunken 24-pack rockets. The launcher, a central diffusion superheated plasma shield. The shield can cover the entire ship in 2 seconds, and the maximum speed can reach 2,000 km per hour, cost 3,000 resource points. And besides that, there is another, name: Losing Killer, Level 3. Description: Land Killer is a heavy-duty unmanned man combat platform with a height of 7.6 meters and a humanoid structure. Door grenade launcher: the front armor is made of 40mm alloy steel plate. In unmanned mode, the AI system equipped inside the Land Killer can carry out basic annihilation or defense tasks according to the instructions. In manned mode, the user can enter the holographic control mode, with a primary neuron connection function as a slow-moving heavy-duty weapon of destruction. Besides these big guys, Su Ran even found a bolter. Name: Standard Caliber Bolter. Description: bolter, that is, a bolt weapon, fires explosive bullets propelled by rockets. The types of ammunition can be armor-piercing bullets, fragmentation bullets, interference bullets, etc. The standard caliber bolt gun has a caliber of 19.4 mm and a magazine capacity 4.6, cost 10 resource points. In addition, there are also a lot of equipment for individual soldiers, some conventional and some exotic. For example, name: Explosive Fruit Knife. Description: An explosive fruit knife without an active trigger button. Throwing the weapon will cause an explosion immediately after impact. This weapon is a must-have for top agents. Cost 2/1 resource points. Seeing such a thing, Su-Ran became very upset. What is this? An exploding fruit knife? Why don't I think this thing is useful? What surprised Su-Ran was that there were a series of things under this category. For example, exploding coconuts, exploding watches, exploding mobile phones, exploding shoes, etc. Su-Ran searched for a long time, and finally found the answer to the question in an exploding pajamas. The above description says, secret agent bed damage weapon, tailor-made for suicide attacks and people who are not afraid of damage. Su-Ran, does the system think that the host should be invulnerable after the 3rd level? However, looking at this series of things, Su-Ran's heart was really throbbing. And he wished he could build them all. If he had these things, his combat power would not only need to be upgraded to a higher level. Su-Ran's eyes were red. The energy came up all at once. His raptor chariot rumbled into action, and the 2 pathfinders roared through the air. At this moment, only a few words floated in Su-Ran's mind. Resource points. Resource points. Give me resource points. I want more resource points. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Booby. In the Ice City, in the dim night, Su-Ran was galloping on the street with a raptor chariot produced by the system, roaring and smashing into several scrapped vehicles blocking the way. A BMW was hit and spun and plunged into the messy storefront on the side of the street, but Su-Ran's raptor chariot roared past. Only then did Su-Ran crush him, and there was a terrifying hissing sound following him. It was a big army of black beetles. There could be hundreds of them in front and behind, howling and chasing after them, biting hard on the back of Su-Ran's raptor chariot. The vibration caused by them running on the street was like an earthquake, but at this time, Su-Ran suddenly plunged into shadow. And the 55mm automatic cannon on the vehicle fired randomly in 2 seconds, and the short bright fire reflected countless black beetles hiding in the shadow. These black beetles were startled by Su-Ran in an instant. They howled and chased them out, and joined the chasing army behind Su-Ran, chasing and intercepting them, chasing Su-Ran. But this is not over yet. Su-Ran drove his own armored chariot, wandering around in circles in this urban area, followed the guidance of the Pathfinder, found the places where the black beetles were hiding, and took one of them. The heads were drawn out and gathered behind him into a torrent of black beetles. There were about 300 or 400 of them before Su-Ran suddenly turned around and rushed towards a gas station on the side of the road at high speed. From the gas station, along the specific routes whizzed by. Regardless of these, the black beetle followed closely all the way, crowded each other, and chased wildly, hissing tore through the night sky. However, the moment they poured into the gas station in large numbers, Su-Ran, who had already driven a certain distance, directly detonated the detonating device he had placed at the gas station in advance. Boom! With an earth-shattering loud noise, the gas station behind instantly turned into the most grand bonfire in the night. Huge fireballs rolled on the ground, and black beetles were blown up everywhere. However, outside the gas station, in many places, there are traces of excavation on the asphalt road, and there are small dirt bumps one by one inside. There were mines that Su-Ran had placed in advance, densely covering the outside of the gas station. If it was a human being, seeing such an obvious landmine, he would never step on it, but these black beetles were already panicked by the bombing, and their intelligence was not high at all, and they ran around and detonated everywhere. The entire street was instantly plunged into a feast of explosions. There are flames everywhere, death is everywhere. This is a trap preset by Su-Ran to lure the black beetle into the urn. The flames shot up into the sky, and the black beetles behind were killed and injured by a large number of blasts, and they wailed endlessly, but the vitality of these things was amazing. Under such circumstances, many of them were still alive and dying at this time. Su-Ran was driving his raptor chariot, and slowly rolled over from behind. Over the embers of the battlefield, the fort slowly turned, and cooperated with the automatic machine gun, strangling those fish that slipped through the net one by one. However, this hunting method also has a disadvantage, that is, the bodies of some black beetles in the center of the explosion are almost destroyed by the explosion. Even if they are recovered, there is no more than 1 unit of resource points during this process. There were sporadic black beetles who felt the roar of the explosion, but because they were not large enough, They became the souls of Suran's cannon, and finally became Suran's resource points. After this round, another few hundred resource points were credited. A few days ago, it was human beings who were slaughtered so brutally in this city. Under the control of the insect nest, these bugs cooperated with each other to build traps and encircle the survivors. Now, the situation seems to be reversed. This world is changing. It is indeed fickle. Suran ran over the flames on the ground and continued to drive forward in the sky. There were a few scattered locusts howling and circling, but they didn't dare to kill them easily. They just watched from afar. Suran can actually beat them down, but with these scattered air units, there was no reason for Suran to stop and fire on purpose. There are many black beetles in this area, but there are relatively few living people. Suran has been active in this place for several hours, but he hardly saw a few living people. There were just one or two sporadic ones. Most of them hid in their homes and looked out in horror. Someone even wrote SOS on the window with a marker pen. When Suran's raptor chariot passed by, shined this way with a flashlight, but they don't even have the courage to go out of their own homes to survive. Suran is not a saint either. He would save everyone. Even his chariot would not be able to hold it. So would he still waste time to send the survivors back? The answer is obviously no. Now the situation in Bingchang has ushered in a once-in-a-lifetime turning point. These people are still unwilling to leave their comfortable place. In fact, Suran doesn't want to help such people. Looking at these people, Suran couldn't help but think of the burning Bingchang University before, feeling silent in her heart, and couldn't help but sigh sometimes. How people live depends on their own choices. In the middle of the night, Suran had harvested more than 1,000 resource points. This kind of efficiency was beyond his imagination. The loose sand of the Black Beetle turned Suran into a bully with resources in hand. Suran is like an arms tycoon in the last days, throwing out all kinds of weapons for free, all the way down. It is completely crushed by firepower. Of course, Suran would not confront hundreds of Black Beetles head-on. Black Beetles are still Black Beetles after all. His raptor chariot may not be able to withstand the impact of the swarm. As the sky was getting brighter, Suran was also going to turn back to see how the military's battle was going. On the way back, Suran ran into a group of survivors, who were besieged by a small group of migratory locusts. This team has 2 buses, but there are only 3 or 4 sporadic fighters to protect them. These fighters basically have those basic weapons in their hands, so there is no combat power at all. More than a dozen locusts bite. This convoy made it impossible for them to move an inch, and Suran came over at this time, turned the automatic cannon from the back, switched to semi-automatic mode, fired precisely, and shot and killed the migratory locusts attacking the convoy. In an instant, several of them were killed, and the rest scattered like birds and beasts fled in a panic. But there is another end, which has already forcefully tore off the iron roof of a bus, howled and got in, and is massacring. Seeing this, Suran got out of the car with a dark energy hunting gun, rushed directly into the chaotic bus in front, pulled the migratory locust from the back, and pulled it out forcefully, killed on the spot. The survivors and a few little soldiers inside were a little stunned when they saw this cruel monster being dragged out and beaten to death by Suran like a chicken. How could this powerful monster be killed like a chicken? Chapter 97 Bolt Gun. These survivors and soldiers all stared at Suran dumbfounded, and didn't recover for a long time. After a while, a soldier pointed at Suran and said, You are, if you want to survive, follow me. After Suran only said this, he reboarded his chariot and led the way. These survivors and fighters look at me and I look at you, and they are all a little dazed. Someone whispered, this may be a powerful awakener. It doesn't look like. Did you notice the reflections under his clothes? That might be some kind of latest model powered exoskeleton. Of course, Suran didn't know what these people were thinking. He had to go back anyway, just to save people. When he turned back to the hypermarket, Suran realized that the survivors gathered here, both in size and in number, were much more than when he left before, almost twice as many people. The Ice City, which seemed to have been wiped out before, still hides so many survivors. Of course, considering the huge population base of Ice City, these survivors gathered from all directions are definitely not too many. Suran returned to the survivor base, and the few people he rescued along the way were all handed over to the military for resettlement. He directly found Lin Yuanduang and others who had been busy all the time, and confirmed the situation of recovery of insect corpses. Lin Yuanduang and the others found a small disused factory nearby to store the recycled insect corpses, which was relatively hidden. Suran entered it, took a while, and wiped out the Black Beetle corpses, emitting a foul smell, which looked like there were more than 300 resource points. This amount is not a lot, but it is not a lot after all. The military is still responsible for the tasks of relocating the survivors, collecting supplies for Xinjiang, etc. The insect corpses brought back are basically the corpses of the Black Beetles who actively attacked here during this period. It was the time when the military was in a state of desperation, and they hadn't been able to allocate too many troops to fight against the Black Beetle, but this is not bad. At least it proves that this solution is feasible now. Suran was thinking about other things. He remembered that there seemed to be an iron mine near Aodong, Xinjiang province. When the end of the world broke out, there must be a lot of unprocessed raw ore there. They were all free resources. This may be eating what is in the bowl and thinking about what is in the pot and watching Suran empty out a warehouse of insect corpses. Lin Yuandong, who was following Suran, was so shocked that his eyes almost didn't fall out. There are so many Black Beetle corpses. Suran shook his hand, and in such a short time, they all disappeared. Only then did Lin Yuandong realize that Suran wanted to exchange ammunition for insect corpses. This was not a fool's policy, nor was it the righteousness that those soldiers said, but these insect corpses, Suran was really useful. Although Lin Yuandong was surprised, he didn't ask a single word, as if he didn't see the shocking scene in front of him at all. He knew that Suran did this in front of his face without explaining it, and he wouldn't even ask it himself. If there is a result, it will leave a bad impression on Suran. Don't worry about how people do it, it's more important to remember who you're with. Lin Yuandong said, Brother Su, you can rest assured here, although these Black Beetles are not easy to carry, and their blood will cause irreversible damage to the transport vehicles we found, but these are not problems. I took out as sausages. There are plenty of people who will take the initiative to help us find various construction vehicles. Of course, don't worry, these bug corpses are sent here, and in this factory, only our own people can enter. Hearing this, Suran glanced at Lin Yuandong. Although Lin Yuandong's words seemed to be rambling, they actually had his own thoughts. He not only told Suran what they were doing, but also explained the method clearly, which seemed very capable, and also took into account Suran's desire to keep it secret. Suran didn't say anything more. Nodding, he handed him a communication device and a newly made bolt gun, and said, if there is any situation, please contact me at any time. This thing is a bolt gun. I wonder if you have heard of it? If there's an emergency, you can use it. Seeing Suran leave here, Lin Yuandong couldn't help but smile slightly. He knew that Suran gave him these two things meant further approval, and at this time, Lin Yuandong's younger brothers rushed up from the other side. A younger brother who knows the goods was surprised and said, I'm going. This is a Volter, Black technology. I've only seen it in the game. Does Suran treat us as cronies? However, how did he do it just now? The insect corpse is in this warehouse, but Lin Yuandong only smiled slightly, and said, what are you still calling Suran? Brother Su will be the boss of all of us from now on, and what about cronies or not, they think highly of us, and we have to be worthy of them. Also, let me say it again, in this factory, no one is allowed to bring outsiders in, and you must never tell what Brother Su is doing here. Doing things for others, people think highly of us, we can't make any mistakes, this is the rule. I'm not joking, brothers, remember clearly. When he said the first part, Lin Yuandong was still very kind, but when it came to the latter sentence, he became serious. His brothers were all stunned when they saw this, knowing what Lin Yuandong said. They were not joking at this moment. These people couldn't help but put away their hippie smiles and said seriously, understood, boss. At this time, Suran had already walked towards the destroyer, and when he came under the destroyer, Suran discovered that Xianxi and a group of soldiers were still guarding him outside his destroyer, preventing others get close to this behemoth easily. Suran was slightly moved in his heart, walked over, took out a cigarette, and distributed it to several soldiers here, and then stood here with Xianxi, smoking a cigarette side by side under the shadow of the destroyer. I said, thank you, Monitor. Thank you. Xianxi glanced at him, shook his head, and said, thank you, I should. If you're really embarrassed, I think your chariot is pretty good. How about giving me one later? Suran, you are too impolite. The lion opened his mouth when he came up. Xianxi smiled slightly, and said, ha ha ha, look, this is the hypocritical Z. Okay, let's not talk to you. There is a man named Yuan Lichen. He said he knows you and wants to find you. I stopped over there. Take a look. Yuan Lichen. The name swirled in Suran's mind for a while before he remembered that this was a gentleman he had chatted with before the war. Suran had a good impression of him. After thinking about it, she followed the direction Xianxi pointed and found Yuan Lichen in the corner. Seeing Suran, Yuan Lichen stood up, stretched out his hand, shook Su Ran's hand, and said with a smile, "Mr. Su, I'm here for an interview." Although Su Ran guessed that this guy might also be here for friendship, he didn't expect him to be so straightforward, and went straight to the point. "But this is not annoying. Everyone knows the purpose of coming, why bother to pretend?" After explaining his purpose in one sentence, Yuan Licheng said politely and seriously, "Let me introduce myself again. I am Yuan Licheng. I was a project engineer of China Construction 8th Bureau before the end of the world. This kind of experience may not be useful now, but it can help you in the future. You analyze the structure of the worm nest. Of course, from now on, it seems useless, but the most important thing is that now you obviously can no longer accept SPLA soldiers stationed in your behemoth. You must be short of people. We happen to know each other before, so I thought you could use me for a try. This gentle guy is actually a construction worker." Chapter 98. The reason why Su Ran has a deep impression of Yuan Licheng is because the last time he had a conversation with the other party, this survivor was very insightful. Secondly, there is something about this guy's name that always makes him. Su Ran thought of some kind of orange drink. However, this person is not annoying, straight to the point. It's better than talking nonsense. Moreover, this person's brain is active, and he has his own insights in doing things. Maybe professional is not suitable, but it can still be used temporarily. Su Ran also cut to the chase and said, "I'm really short of people here, but at this stage you come to my place, probably just doing odd jobs." Su Ran is telling the truth. His destroyer has two modes of operation. The first is the normal mode of operation, which requires the cooperation and maintenance of many people, while the other is the holographic mode. Under normal circumstances, Su Ran can do most of the work alone with the intelligent AI auxiliary system of the destroyer. At most, there are two turrets, which need to be manually controlled by humans in wartime. Su Ran will definitely choose the latter control mode to drive the destroyer. Therefore, the people Su Ran needs at this time are indeed just handymen. For example, manipulating the internal infrastructure of some destroyers, ammunition inspection, fuel inspection, etc. To put it bluntly, they are logistics support personnel, but to put it bluntly, they are just doing miscellaneous work. Both of them got straight to the point, so Yuan Licheng smiled slightly and said, "Nowadays, many people who want to do odd jobs don't have that chance. If anyone knows that there is a chance to be on your fighter plane to do odd jobs, they will probably be overwhelmed with excitement." Su Ran recalled the scene of the mountains and tsunami outside during the day, and asked suspiciously, "Is it that exaggerated?" "Of course it's that exaggerated." Yuan Licheng said, "The news that everyone is going to evacuate to Xinjiang has spread among ordinary survivors. There is a very clear reason for this. If you follow the military convoy, not to mention how many monsters you will encounter on the road, judging from the current road conditions and situation, it will take at least 10 hours or even longer for the fleeing team of tens of thousands of people to arrive, and whoever can get on your ship the fighter plane may arrive in half an hour, so who cannot be crazy." Yuan Licheng made a point like this before Su Ran realized that he had been researching insecticide and accumulating resource points before, but he didn't think about it so much. Now that he thinks about it, some of those soldiers have been spying on his own destroyer. Selfishness, of course. In this world, how many people can have no selfishness? It's just that everyone's selfishness affects them differently at that moment. Su Ran took Yuan Licheng into the interior of the destroyer. Now there are only Li Yilan and Xin Yu left. Seeing Su Ran coming in, Li Yilan stood up and said, "Well, Su Ran, here, we can only stay on the bridge. There is no authority anywhere, we can't go anywhere, we can't press anything." It's not that Su Ran forgot that there are two people here, but because of the particularity of the destroyer as a weapon. If the authority is given, Li Yilan will not use it correctly. Just firing a cannon may cause the survivors who are close at hand to survive. The victims paid the price in blood as for Su Ran. He also briefly explained this. He introduced Yuan Licheng to Li Yilan and asked them to sit temporarily in the small lounge inside the destroyer. The AI program system arranged an urgent remedial class for the two to learn the necessary knowledge about this destroyer. As for Su Ran, after giving simple instructions and leaving a lot of food and drink, he nestled in the main driver's seat in the middle, and simply fell asleep for a while. When I opened my eyes again, Ice City had already bathed the entire city in the warm light of the morning sun. In the bridge of the destroyer, multiple maintenance robots have already stood neatly in the corner. After such a long time, they have finally completed the maintenance of the destroyer, and the functions of the entire destroyer have been fully restored. Of course, although there is still a gap from the brand new state, there are still traces of tragic battles in many places, but this makes this behemoth is more ferocious and powerful at this time. Most of the ammunition and weapons that Su-Ran manufactured in large quantities were completed, and the manufacturing channels of several systems were finally free, and Su-Ran directly started to manufacture important large-scale items. Dear host, the Level 3 Enlightenment assault ship has entered the manufacturing sequence. Estimated completion time: 112 hours. Dear host, Land Killer has entered the production sequence. Estimated completion time: 12 o'clock. Dear host, several large pieces were all put on the production schedule by Su-Ran. His destroyer does not need too many members, let alone carry survivors to Xinjiang. That is not his obligation. Su-Ran planned to use various style weapons to fill it up. The Land Killer exists as an in-ship defense weapon in the destroyer. During the Ice City War, locusts broke into his destroyer and killed many soldiers. Li Yilin almost died. A reminder, the number of insect swarms is huge. On the future battlefield, the possibility of invading into Su-Ran's destroyer is extremely high. We must also prepare powerful firepower inside the destroyer. At the end of the day, Su-Ran can be said to be spending money like dirt. The resource points that have just arrived and have not been warmed up are consumed by him in large sums, as if they don't want money, and they are ready to build their own doomsday war system. It's not that Su-Ran didn't want to build the high-temperature molten nano-cloud weapon, but it was too expensive. Even if he wanted to invest in the manufacturing, his previous resource points would not be enough. Moreover, this kind of weapon burns everything. Once fired, there are no resource points that can be recovered for you. In case of emergency, the resource points will be burned up like this. Therefore, at this stage, Su-Ran is really reluctant to spend money to build this thing. Of course, although these things have all entered the manufacturing sequence now, it will take time before they are actually built. After the destroyer was repaired, the sky became dazzlingly bright. Su-Ran operated a destroyer and lifted off from the ground again. Before that, Su-Ran politely invaded the temporary channel of Chen Tuanzang and the others, and shouted, "Tuanzang, I'm taking off, all units pay attention." Head Chen was giving orders in the temporary headquarters, but he didn't expect Su-Ran's voice to come out of his communication device. Then, hearing the rumbling noise, the old head ran all the way out and saw Su-Ran. However, the destroyers lying in the hypermarket are rising inch by inch. Chen Donglian tore off his hat and said cursingly, "Is this a ghost? It's already in the air, so you're reporting to me. Did you call me out to eat dirt?" Chapter 99. Is he demonstrating? Su-Ran's destroyer suddenly lifted off, causing confusion among many people below. Some people even thought that Su-Ran was leaving early, and many people even panicked. After all, the presence of such a giant fighter plane is the most powerful reassurance for anyone, even more effective than hundreds of fighters here. At this time, seeing it flying and leaving, people were more or less, it seemed, a little panicked, and the scene was a little chaotic. However, Su-Ran didn't want to retreat to Xinjiang. Are you kidding? He managed to take down half of the Ice City, and the bugs hadn't killed many, and if they were about to run away, he would have suffered a big loss. The destroyer lifted off, then turned, and flew towards the insect nest in the northern city where the destroyer passed by. The swarms of insects on the ground retreated, and with the size of the destroyer, it was not easy to lower the altitude to slaughter the black beetles in the city. Being big has its pros and cons, of course. However, Su-Ran's target was not the bugs in the city. His sword pointed directly at the shrinking bug nests in the northern city. The insect nest was covered with dense black beetles. Previously, Su-Ran was driving a raptor chariot, and did not dare to come here to cause trouble. Now that the destroyer is in the air, Su-Ran upholds the fine virtue of killing you while you are sick, and is going to see if he can get out of the insect nest. Scrape off a layer of skin. However, this time, Su-Ran thought too much. He drove the destroyer roaring over, and threw an expensive depleted uranium bomb in the air, intending to try to blow it up first. However, this depleted uranium bomb was fired from the destroyer at high speed, but failed to hit the black beetle that was like a carapace covering the periphery of the insect nest. Instead, it exploded at a distance of about 7 or 8 meters from the black beetle lair. Only in the flames of the explosion could the shadow of the shield be seen outside of the worm nest and the black beetle. At some point, the worm nest's shield was restored. Su-Ran was slightly taken aback. The recovery speed of the worm nest was beyond his imagination. Of course, this does not rule out the possibility that the insect nest is afraid of Su-Ran, and the defense system has been restored first, while other internal structures are still in disarray. However, this situation also ruined Su-Ran's beautiful plan. But Su-Ran didn't leave either. He failed to attack the insect nest, so he directly lowered the height of the destroyer, Along the river in Bichang district, the buildings collapsed and the ground collapsed. It was already half empty. For Su Ran's destroyer, it can be said that there is no hindrance. Su Ran lowered his height, and started to fire wildly at the riverbank where the mud rolled. According to Su Ran's understanding, diggers are gregarious creatures, and under the command of Wu Nest, they are quite lazy. Therefore, since they used to live here in large numbers, they should also use this place as their nest and dig here again. Build a nest for yourself and continue to occupy this area. When Su Ran fired at this time, it was the underground diggers that exploded. For this purpose, Su Ran specially prepared 32 special ground-penetrating bombs, and tilted the destroyer. The missiles were thrown out by him as if they didn't need money. They fired 4 rounds, and all the 32 ground-penetrating bombs were smashed by him. Go out. The sound of the explosion was earth-shattering. The whole earth trembled, smoke and dust billowed up, and the ground was turned over. Su Ran's guess was correct. A large number of diggers were startled, howled and blasted out of the ground where they were hiding. Looking down from the air, on the ground, amidst the smoke and flames, many huge white fleshy insects struggled and twisted their bodies, and what greeted them was the full firepower of the Su Ran destroyer in the sky. Some big bugs were killed on the spot, and some were fleeing in panic, but in this case, fleeing on the surface of the open area along the river in Bichang district is tantamount to a living target. For these diggers, the only chance they have is to run away from the ground. Certainly, there are also some diggers, howling and jumping up from the ground, wanting to attack Su Ran's destroyer, but although they are huge, it is impossible for them to touch Su Ran's destroyer that is high in the sky. This is the advantage of air dominance. These oil worms, without the advantage of intensive battle worms as a whole, instantly fell into the disadvantage of being in a desperate situation. Facing the one-sided massacre, they have no power to resist. While firing, Su Ran murmured, "Young bastard, let's see who is going to run away this time." Su Ran's move is definitely considered a big move, and it is impossible not to be noticed at the hypermarket. Chen Donglian was all over the place. A group of military officers at all levels ran over, and even representatives of the survivors came over and asked about the situation in a hurry. "Chief Chen, is this your order? What is this doing?" Su Ran took the initiative to attack. Is he sure to destroy the insect nest? What kind of military plan is this? The firepower is fierce. How did Chen Donglian know what Su Ran was doing? But he couldn't tell the truth, because in this way, wouldn't this group of people who have already fried the pot go crazy? My fellow fighters are fine, especially those representatives of the survivors. If I make a half-sentence mistake, it may be misunderstood by the other party as something even more outrageous. Chen Donglian could only be cautious, and kept saying, "This is our plan. All Mr. Su's actions are in our plan, but we can't disclose it to everyone now. I hope everyone can understand. Every action we take now is to work hard to keep everyone alive. Please believe in us. Please believe in us." After driving all these people away, Yurkijin stayed at the end, but did not leave. He looked at Chen Donglian and said, "Not bad, Commander Chen, the end of the world is coming, and your official language is getting slippery the more you speak." Chen Donglian groaned and said, "His grandma, everyone came to ask me, how could I know what he was doing to bombard the worm's nest? Why can't I understand this Su Ran's actions at all? The tortoise shell that can't break the insect nest, is it to kill the insects and demonstrate in front of the insect nest? No, if this is the case, he is too childish, right? Yi Liansheng, do you know that Su Ran is singing this? Which one will come out?" Yi Kijin shook his head, smiled wryly and said, "How would I know that?" Chen Donglian sighed, and just as he was about to say something, another soldier ran in a panic and said, "It's terrible. It's terrible." "Commander Chen?" Chen Donglian raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "What's the matter? Look at you. Do you look like a soldier?" The soldier was the one who was stunned. He immediately stood up straight and said loudly, "Report, sir. Su Ran suddenly started to turn the muzzle and is blowing up buildings along the river." "Blow up the building?" Hearing this, Chen Donglian's eyes almost popped out. What the hell is this guy trying to do? Head Chen scolded and scolded, but after a while of spitting, he frowned and fell into deep thought. What was the purpose of Su Ran's series of big moves? It's a pity that now he has to manage the army, recruit survivors, prepare for the big retreat, stabilize the morale of the army and the people, and making a plan has already made him burned out. He has no time to find out what Su Ran is doing. What secrets are these hiding? Things always have to be done one by one. If he can't bring these survivors out of the ice city safely, even if he knows the mystery behind Su Ran's series of actions, it won't be of much significance for the time being. Chapter 100 Killing Insects for a while. Chen Donglian paced back and forth, saying, "Why did he blow up the building? What's the point?" At this moment, Su Ran was indeed bombing the building. He shot a circle of diggers, leaving a large number of corpses, then raised the altitude, turned the muzzle, and began to clean up those lucky buildings along the river that hadn't collapsed. Su Ran did this because he wanted to recycle resource points. Collapsed buildings can also be recycled as resource points. After the war, Su Ran had recycled the ruins and wreckage along the way, but now, Su Ran is sweeping the building, intending to study whether this method is easy to use anyway. Now that the worm nests are shrinking, and there are a large number of war worms in the Ice City without a leader, he and his own destroyer are the well-deserved overlords in the Ice City, and they can do whatever they want. In theory, that being the case, of course you have to try something you haven't tried before. In fact, Su Ran has already tried the two operations of collecting soil and collecting water just now, but the two methods of filling resource points with soil and water all ended in failure. Su Ran tried a few times before realizing that in the judgment of the system, the water in the river, the soil and stones on the ground are also called the overall structure, far beyond the limit that Su Ran can recycle. Although after reaching the third level, the distance and scope of Su Ran's recovery of resources through the wristwatch have increased, but it is obviously not yet at the point where he can take away a large river and an entire stratum. However, Su Ran had expected this for a long time. If the functions of the system under the third level were really so amazing, then he would not have to sit here, and would have become the overlord of the universe long ago. Therefore, Su Ran turned his attention to the buildings along the river Yuan Lichen came in handy at this time, and was directly pulled by Su Ran to study how to blow up buildings, and analyzed through the AI intelligence inside the destroyer to carry out the blasting. The blasting process is relatively cumbersome. He can't blow up the whole building to pieces. In that case, even if he recycles the resource points, the conversion rate will not be high. The building collapsed with a bang, and dust waves shot up into the sky, as if a giant monster turned into smoke swallowed a building from bottom to top. The scene was almost the same as in the blockbuster when the worm nest ruled the world before. Su Ran didn't dare to do this. He dared to blow up the building on his side, and the worm swarm on the other side dared to rub him on the ground. Su Ran blew up several times in a row, and found that this was more troublesome than he imagined. The time of blasting, the time of building collapse, the time of recycling. Putting it all together, the recovered resource points have not yet driven the Raptor chariot or destroyers come with high efficiency. Moreover, Su Ran also analyzed and identified whether there were innocent survivors inside or outside the building. Although Su Ran was at the recycling point and had no plan or obligation to rescue the survivors on the roadside, he didn't want to kill anyone because of himself. It's true that resource points are important, but he can't kill those innocent people at will because of this. This is the foundation of being a human being. However, in the process, Su Ran found a surprise. It was a high-rise building with more than 20 floors, and it was also a building in the riverside area. It was not too close to the main battlefield, so it was only slightly affected by the previous Ice City war. The building was damaged. When the destroyer turned around, it unexpectedly scanned through the shipboard radar that there were a large number of creatures on the top 2 floors of this building. Judging from the analysis screen sent back, the top 2 floors of the tall building were full of migratory locusts hanging upside down like bats hiding inside. This is really a pleasant surprise. Su Ran was having fun at the time. He threw out a row of missiles from a long distance away. In an instant, the roof of that building was blown away. Many migratory locusts were killed on the spot, and some screamed. Flying in panic, he was about to run away quickly. However, at this moment, a large dark cloud enveloped these panicked locust monsters. It was Su Ran's destroyer that slowly pressed over and fired in the air, strangling and killing all the panicked locusts on the spot. And these migratory locust monsters, some of them were extremely vicious, facing the attack. They even took the initiative to attack Su Ran's destroyer, but this was just a mantis armed to speed up their demise. In fact, Su Ran wanted to find the Sky Patroller more. A Skywatcher is worth 300 resource points, and the real one is worth more than 300. When the Ice City War started, there were only 3 Sky Patrollers in total. 2 of them were shot down by Su Ran in the air, and they were defeated tragically. The remaining one had 2 legs broken. Impossible to hide, but now it's gone. At the end of the war, there was chaos, and Su Ran didn't pay attention to this monster. Now that I think about it, it might have escaped from the Ice City at that time. The Hive still had some control over the swarm at that time. Even if the hive didn't care about the cannon fodder warbugs, it should still protect the Skywatchers. It was a pity for Su-Ran to think that the duck with its beak just flew away at this time. Su-Ran was turning around a destroyer in the sky, and started killing insects in this area again. The efficiency of blowing up buildings is too low. It is not as good as killing insects. Anyway, he is the #1 overlord of the Ice City, the most powerful predator. He can hunt without any scruples. It's cool to kill insects for a while, and it's cool to kill all the time. Moreover, Su-Ran knew that if he stayed in the Ice City for one more day, it would be a risk for one more day. So he had to use all his time. But what Su-Ran didn't know was that he went around killing insects everywhere, and in the close-at-hand insect nest, there was a creature looking at him coldly. It was that praying mantis-like creature, with 32 black eyes open, but it did not observe the outside world through this organ, but completed the process of seeing through the outer biosensors of the insect nest in its view. The current behavior of that unknown spaceship seems to be provocative, but it is not provocative, which makes the insect a little unpredictable from the perspective of behavior. This unknown spaceship seems to be very similar to humans, but judging from the current situation, this spaceship seems to be performing efficient and large-scale resource recovery operations, which is not something humans will do, and it supports this. The technology of resource recovery and the operation of this spacecraft is not something that humans can possess. Or, the civilization in this unknown spacecraft is a low-end civilization that is almost the same as Zerg and human beings, and is only very developed in one aspect. And below this praying mantis-like creature, the interior of the once incomparably brilliant insect nest is now dim, with only slight fluorescence, like a huge factory that has been abandoned for many years. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.